All right, it is 6 o'clock and I will call the meeting to order. Those present have name tags in front of them this year for streamline. First item of business will be to elect a chair. I will open the nominations for chair.
Make a nomination that we elect Eric.
Oh, yeah, couldn't hear it, yeah.
I seconded the chair, yeah.
Gonna run the meeting,
They run the meeting, okay. I seconded it.
okay? Are there any other nominations for chair?
John, okay, John. Sure, why not?
I'll second the nomination.
Yeah.
Okay, would you be willing to accept chair if you were voted?
Sure.
And would you be willing?
No, you will do. I'll take second. You just backed it.
Are there any more nominations for chair?
Okay,
Hearing none, motion, these nominations, all those in favor of Kara? All those in favor of John? Kara, you are the chair by a vote of 6-1. Meeting now belongs to you.
okay. So I don't get to look at that even. So we are going to,
You want me to get you the nomination?
yeah,
Okay.
that way I can look at this. Yes,
Nominations for vice chair, please.
I'll second.
Any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, we'll order nomination cease. All those in favor of Becky for vice chair? Those opposed? Those abstained? Are you in favor or opposed, Becky? Or abstaining?
I abstain, I don't
Okay.
vote for myself, but one meeting, how bad could it be?
All right, and then nomination for secretary, please.
No,
I second, third, yeah.
Any other nominations? Nominations shall cease. All those in favor of Melanie as secretary? Those opposed? Those abstained? One abstention. Congratulations, officers.
So. We review the. Last year's minutes and.
Make a motion to accept the minutes from January 13th, 2022.
In favor? Right. And then I guess I say. Discussion, review. The 2023 budget,
Yeah, they want to start with fire.
and they start, yeah. Start with fire. Can I ask Richard, because obviously, just new paperwork, what is different on the new as opposed to the old?
So on the deck that went out to you folks, hard copy, there was a copy and paste that I went down through. And I did scroll all the way to the top of the spreadsheet before I hit paste. So it's offset by the rows, even though it's like line 3 rows long.
It's all.
So if you just cross. Select board agreed with everything, so you can just look at the town manager.
Okay,
And then I also updated your 2022 actual column to include expenses that were paid last meeting.
okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So I guess we're going to start with the fire budget for 2023. And are we going to go down line by line, or does anybody want to discuss it? I'm not sure. I'm not real familiar on how to run a meeting, but yeah, exactly.
You ask some questions?
Yeah,
My recommendation would be to move a number and second it, and then
Okay.
push it to the floor for discussion.
as a whole.
And then if you want to amend up or down, then you would amend at that point in time.
Okay,
So you would, I would recommend moving one of the numbers before your department, town manager, or select board. And then if you want to amend for your own, then you can amend for your own after your discussion. In fact,
Just to be clear, they're all the same number.
I make a motion that
not all
we,
of them, though.
that we, accept the school, the select board budget of recommendation, sorry, 222,695. You want the total, or you want the
It's the expense.
290,837.
Okay. And
So
then,
mostly personnel, is that?
so is it seconded and then discussed? I'll second it. Discussion.
Yeah, I had some questions about full-time, the first, well, part-time and part-time. What is that?
So you have,
Part-time.
so the fire chief now is considered part-time, because he works part-time for the fire department, and part-time for code.
Okay.
So that covers him for 20 hours a week?
This covers him for 20 hours a week of fire, yes.
Okay. And then,
The other you'll see in the code budget.
okay,
So why are the budget and the actual different?
Pardon?
The budget was 78 and the actual was 81.4. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So that is driven by overtime largely. Of your full-time firefighters.
So then what is full-time overtime?
Oh, sorry, no, okay, you're right. That is driven by out of cycle increases that were awarded based upon merit and retention in October. That were not necessarily budgeted for. But department leadership and myself thought that it needed to be addressed, and so they moved to address it.
And it was one person?
Pardon?
Was it one person or
Two,
didn't one quit?
one resigned just recently.
Okay.
so
They're now making more than McDonald's, so.
So the $2 and, I mean, if you figure that out, it's like $2.76 an hour that they got. That doesn't have to go through anybody else. The chief can just award that to,
So it goes to the chief and then it comes to me, and if it's outside the confines of the budget, then it goes to the select board.
okay,
But the raises were granted within the confines of the budget.
okay. And
How is 78,000 is budgeted? And the raise, how does that? What budget?
Because we don't line item budget. The department receives a budget. What you see for lines is strictly a tool for us to budget the department.
Okay.
so what happens to the surplus? Because at the time of this, there was a surplus of $2,900, but then you, town manager, requested 89.5, so that's an $11,500 increase. What happens with, because I've seen that throughout the budget, what happens to all that extra money?
If it doesn't get spent
Right,
in a traditional department budget as fire is, that money lapses back into the general fund. With no allocation attached to it. And then at town meeting or later in this meeting, you talk about using the undesignated fund to offset taxation. And that's that money, your surplus money.
okay. And is there an account at the end of the year that somebody, I mean,
That
as,
money goes into,
yeah,
the auditors will come in and they'll clear all of our accounts out and it goes into surplus.
okay,
And then you try to keep anywhere between 3 to 8 months worth of operating expense, revenues not considered. You want the expenses in that account, we always have a very healthy surplus. And that's allowed us, last year we took out 300,000, we probably could have taken out 6. And still had a very healthy fund balance, so.
And that's what about a truck, fire truck from 1 year, right? Was it the undesignated fund? The
We
year
put 100,000 out of surplus 1 year for a fire truck, and we put, I think, another 100,000. In 2015 for a fire station, so yeah, I mean, that's all money that you paid years ago, right? Like taking it out of savings.
What about the benefits? Just to understand it, not because I'm questioning it, but
Mhm.
3,500 last year budget, this time 8,000, is that because we're adding personnel or?
So we've got the 20-hour week position of the fire chief that needs to be accounted for that wasn't there before.
Okay.
We have right now a retirement option for employees to contribute up to 6%. That 6% can be matched. We have employees that contribute 0%, therefore the 0% match. But they could always kick that up and contribute the 6%.
Okay.
There's also a really dire need for us to consider moving towards the main employees public retirement system, which allows these emergency service workers and other public employees a 25 and out option. If that is standard across emergency services, most public service right now, but especially emergency services, and it's going to be a retention obstacle for us in the department if we don't have that. So it's important that we keep that intact and budget to the full 6% allowance. So that could be 6% of your wages, that line.
And FICA, isn't that a tax
Yeah, FICA is 7.65% of all wages.
of all wages? Okay.
7.65.
Is that for everybody or just for the fire chief?
The health insurance is for the 2 full-time employees and half for the fire chief. Yep. The other half goes out of code.
Okay.
What is the office supplies? The budget was 250 and it was close to 500.
So, I mean, this last year, probably what you're gonna see there is toners for the large copier that they have that, you know, every 2 or 3 years at the fire department, that you're replacing things like that. It could be binders if they went through, I don't have the exact answer for you, but we're redoing safety files and they need new binders or something like that. That could easily trick that up a couple $100.
Refilling a cabinet, refilling the shelves. So sometimes that's way high, sometimes it's way low.
I also have a question on the Mercer fire amount. Why is that such a decrease from last year and an increase?
So your actual amount will be the budget. It's a contractual amount, 17% of our operating and reserve amount. So they owe us one check. It's probably postmarked December 31st, that we just haven't processed yet. That will bring that 2022 actual up to that 51,000.
Okay.
And then your 68,000 is 17% of the department's request for this year.
Okay.
So that covers off your operational. And when we're done with the budget proper, we'll look at the reserve account and talk about some other drivers behind that.
Okay. I noticed in the revenues page, that does not match.
To this number here.
That the 38,000
Okay.
on the revenue page, it's 51,500.
Okay, tied into the budget. Yep.
I was just questioning that too, like why one spot says one thing and the other one.
That'd be an old cell reference.
Okay. And again, an increase of 57,000 at the end. But we lost a chief, didn't we pay the chief benefits and,
So the previous chief was an on-call firefighter who received a stipend of approximately $3,500 a year. And in last year's budget, we were paying a supplemental. We weren't paying insurance, we were paying a supplemental.
okay,
We're in a difficult situation with the fire chief and the code enforcement officer, which is why we made the move that we did this year. Candidly, $53,000, what you see at the bottom line is related to wages and benefits. You can't find a fire chief, you can't find a code enforcement officer. And so we had to try to build a position that could be attractive, that we could use both. And one of the biggest concerns of the outgoing chief was availability and access. You know, we were looking for somebody 20 to 25 hours a week to serve as fire chief. It's difficult to find that. And when we got talking with our candidates, we had one candidate who's behind you now, Chief Savage, that was all for our code enforcement officer, and that's been a target of compliance. So not to get ahead of ourselves, but there seems to be an opportunity there where to fully staff your code office and better staff your fire, and when they're at the fire station and you need a permit, well, you still go over, or when they're in the code office and the tone goes off, we're able to respond to that too. Wasn't what we thought we were gonna be doing last year at this time, but honestly, I think we've got ourselves a great bargain, and I think that it's a good thing for the town. In terms of public access and public service.
How will this set us up for the future? I'm assuming an incoming fire chief would not have the code enforcement skills or skill set.
Yeah, so I mean, I hopefully we won't have to deal with this.
Right.
He's not.
I know, but you know, you probably want to retire.
What's raised now, he knows working.
Melanie, I can address that. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Not every qualified fire chief out there would have necessarily the code background or want it,
Right.
right? However, we're not unique. We're not the first people to do this. The town of Skowhegan's deputy fire chief is a deputy code enforcement officer, right? And as deputy code enforcement officer in Skowhegan, there's a little bit different duties. It's more about plan reviews and things, but and there's other places in the state of Maine that are doing it too. So I don't think our applicants would be zero.
Okay.
And it's not to say that always forever and a day, when you and I die to put the ground, that it will still be
Right.
half code and half fire. It may change again someday, but it was a good opportunity for that.
And I've got a question that about the vehicle fuel. Is there a reason why the truck has to go up and down the road daily, or pretty much daily?
For those that recall, you mean not going to
I'm
call?
not going to calls, going on the other end of this town and coming back.
Some of that's driver training. We have you heard a little bit about a resignation, and so we had somebody doing some fill-in work. Some of that driver training, but the chief knows more about.
It could be a number of things. Sometimes if they, when we do say a detail, get it could be fire extinguishers. Sometimes they'll bring the truck with them, that way if there's a call when they hear it, they'll get it. So it could be any number of things. But we do have an annual training where most of the driving time, we're using trucks, obviously, like constantly. We're required to get some of the hours in for our employees to make sure we cover the labor standards.
And it is important if you have two full-time employees and a call volume that doesn't keep them busy 100% of the time, right? So we do all of our extinguisher checks in the town. Chief just mentioned a good example. But important, it takes fire truck with them, right? So wherever those people are, they have to have fire truck with them. It doesn't do any good if they don't. So whatever that task is, it seems. It might seem on the surface wasteful, but when you dig into it, there's some pretty valid reasons for it.
Okay.
And of course, the price of fuel.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Diesel pretty expensive. Why are we doing that? I didn't know that there was a hour requirement.
Quite a lot, yeah. Yeah.
So. Any more discussion? First. I'm the one that's thorough. So we're make a motion to approve
You have a motion in a second,
and
so you can amend it or you can vote on it as it is.
vote on that. To,
Vote on it.
yes, go ahead and vote.
Wasn't there?
That's everybody.
Thank you.
You guys,
Almost,
We want to talk about the capital
No.
reserve.
okay,
this is what's fast.
this is even worse than that, right? Capital reserves. We did work that.
I use the front cover sheet as an index. Pages aren't numbered. So it gives you an idea of what comes after. Took me 2 days to figure that out. You come to contingency, you went too far.
After on top.
It's after capital reserves, right there. Okay, so we make a motion to approve the town manager's request for 205,000. Any discussion?
That the whole capital reserves thing, aren't we doing just the fire?
Do you want
Or
to
is
do
that the- that would-
I will take questions on all of it, because I think the gentleman in the back would like a motion on it before they leave.
Yeah, just do a motion on theirs and let them go on their way. They've got 9 minutes.
Last year we did all of it.
All of it, okay.
We can do whatever.
Fire might be the only really controversial item there, isn't it?
It's the only item that's moved.
Yeah.
Sally and I were gonna say $1 million for the bridge.
So we're saving for trucks that are more expensive than they were 2 years ago. That
Pretty much.
Yes, sir.
I'm good.
So a couple things if I can opine, we're due for a fire truck in 2025. Okay, we're not gonna get there at the 60,000 is now we increase. Fire trucks are going up about 1% a month. It also takes about 2 years to get one now, believe it or not. So that in order to get it in 25, we're probably looking to sign a contract in 23. You don't have to pay for it for 2 years, right? But by doing that, Chief did the math, would you have $115,000 savings? Sign a contract now, get it in 20, because they're going up 1% per month.
So it locks you in when you sign a contract.
It does. Well, it's in the current prices.
Yeah, locks in the prices that you don't have to pay until you get it, or maybe a, one progress payment along the way or something, but. It's probably the way we're going, either way, it doesn't matter, we don't have enough to buy our next fire truck. It's the $350,000 truck we bought in 2018. 482,
That's where they're projecting at this point, 40.
right, we haven't got the final numbers yet, but just same truck. 350, 482, 4 years later. 5 years later.
It
Crazy.
was about 40% increase.
Yes,
So you said you're due.
Yeah.
Why are we due another new fire truck? How many do we have? How many do we have? How many do we need, right?
we did, didn't we just file? Thank you for that question. So we did. So we have been on a mission my entire time here, that's 28 years. We have been on a mission to replace fire trucks every 30 years. We maintain 3 Class A pumpers. One's a tanker, really, but by NFPA standards, that's a Class A pumper. So we have a tanker and 2 pumpers. You gotta have 2 pumpers. Because anybody in the military will tell you, if you got 1, you got none, if you got 2, you got 1. That's just the way it is. You gotta have 2 pumpers. So we have 2 pumpers in a tank. 3 trucks, 30-year cycle, you're buying 1 every 10 years, right? And you say, well, we just bought 1. We buy in the middle of the decade. So right now we have a 1996 in the fleet. We have a 2006 in the fleet. And then we should have had a 2016 in the fleet. Why didn't we? Because we were spending 2015 and 16 building and outfitting and moving into a fire station. We moved in January of 16. Once we finally recovered from that, we started working on a fire. So now we have a 2019. So we got off schedule a little bit. Fire station distracted us. All of us part-timers that weren't getting compensated for our time. We only have so much of it. And so we got a little bit behind. That doesn't change the fact that the 1996 truck is still going to be 30 years old. We're trying to get back on schedule, or more properly said, we're trying to stay on schedule. So yes, it kind of has the unfortunate that it puts 2 within, we'll have a 19 and we'll have a 25-ish truck. So they're a little closer, but we were late on our last.
And we have to buy brand new. We can't buy used.
You gonna make it last 30 years? Who's driving a 1996 truck around here? Anybody in this car? Yeah, you know,
Yeah, 2004,
yeah, but.
Like, oh.
But
225,000 miles.
do you rely on the life or death? You know, if we were a department, and not many I use, there is a used market. If we were a department that was looking at changing it out every 5 or 10 years, that may be a consideration. But when you're trying to buy new and keep, and ultimately. Buying new, keep it for 30 years, you're not gonna get any more economical than that. It just unfortunately happens that this time we're a little off schedule from the last purchase. And getting back to the schedule. And frankly. It's gonna be. Probably not 500,000, but it'll be close. Ish. And we are buying very conservatively. And I know that's hard to swallow with 400,000 or 500,000, I get that. But you have commercial pumpers and you have custom pumpers. Commercial pumpers are made from a Freightliner truck. That might have been a beer truck or an international truck that could have been maybe over with a plow and sander on it over here, right there. Commercial cabin chassis, and then they put a fire truck body on. We bought commercial trucks forever, always have, never bought a custom. Custom trucks, many towns will buy custom trucks. Many towns feel that it's important, and it does provide some nice things, but it doesn't put out the fire any better than the commercial truck. And they're right now 700 to 1.2. So, I mean, nobody really knows that or appreciates that or recognizes that we've always been in a commercial truck. We try to stay reasonable. It's expensive, I understand, I get it, completely get it. John, how much is it for a new pickup with all the bells and whistles? I mean,
Yeah, we're buying this, and to your point, right, so we're buying the exact same truck we bought 2 years ago, and it's $20,000 more.
Right.
And the
And that's-
newest one is probably the same price, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. That's why I think Richard mentioned maybe a separate article, how that was gonna work on the. Not necessarily a money article, but approval to sign a contract 2 years early. Ultimately saving the town $100,000+ $1,000. Be a separate article, not a money article.
Where are we going to be for the push for electric? Where
You know,
is that impacting?
electric fire trucks, is that?
You're not gonna be able to get diesel eventually, or
Well, you know, the manufacturers are making them, they're out there. We have 2 Pierce trucks right now, as it happens, and so I'm a little more connected to Pierce. They actually have the Pierce Volt Era fire truck out there. I'm trying not to make this personally political. It will happen someday. The technology is gonna have to get better, right? I can't not go to your house fire because my truck is charging. Right, so maybe there's a hybrid is maybe a better solution potentially for a fire truck, because you can't take the downtime. You know, if you can charge it in half an hour, okay, maybe we can talk, but. If they're out there, they're coming, it will be.
right?
It will be a
I
standard, I'll
mean,
probably be gone, but it'll be a standard. It will happen.
it's gonna be something that's going to be pushed
I
and
imagine it will be
soon.
required.
So why aren't you guys looking into that at this point too? I mean, 10 years, you're saying we gotta prepare for.
The technology and the price point aren't there.
It's gonna be.
All that, the price is, you know, 2 or 3 times what it's crazy for numbers. And the technology isn't there, you can't afford to, I can't not go to Becky's house tonight, right? Then have to get this.
Brick, I'm not using.
Sorry to pick on you, but we have to go.
Always, I live in a brick house.
Well, yeah.
But you also have the charging stations too.
Right, and eventually, I mean, that's all going to have to be part of it. I mean, and if you're thinking about spending $500,000 and you're not going to be able to get diesel for it in 8 years, what's the point of spending $500,000? Maybe we should be looking a little bit farther ahead and
that
thinking
may
about
be,
that.
that may be the right avenue on our next purchase. But you know,
And
the
plus,
technology is not there now, it's not going to be there. If a truck takes 2 years to make, it's not going to be there. It would have to be there by this year or early next for us to to stay on the schedule that we're looking at. It's not there, the price point's not there yet. It will come, and maybe the next purchase it will come, but not.
And then the fire department's gotta put in all these chargers and so on and so forth, so that's another expense.
Yeah.
I know I'm getting ahead of myself,
It
I'm
is.
sorry.
But that's gonna be also town garage, right, the highway,
Right?
and they got more trucks than we do.
I'd like to circle back to one thing. I don't ever think, there's always, it's almost a joke about it, vote for the fire. They won't come to your house. We know absolutely, no matter what we did, would come. So it may be funny to you, it's not funny to. That's not how we vote.
I understand.
Yeah.
My point was, we have to go to every call.
I think if you want to swing to a hatchet, but you'll come.
We come with a smile. Every time.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that. 'cause
Yeah, yeah.
I hear so often people say, I'm not, we better vote or they won't come. They come.
Well, right, some people will joke like that. The point is, and frankly, we keep looking at a four-wheel drive fire truck and it keeps getting shot down because of budget. But we have to go to every call, and it doesn't matter if there's 2 feet of snow on the ground, we have to go. And so,
So what's the difference in cost?
yeah, it's another 50,000 for a four-wheel drive truck. I'm not done, I'm working on it, it's not there yet, but I'm working on it. I would like to have one in the fleet that is four-wheel drive for exactly that reason, you have to go to every call.
Folks in Buffalo, New York, I wish they had.
There you go, John, that's a great example, I have been
50.
literally waist deep in snow. On Pine Street, a lot of years ago, 20 at least, waist deep in snow, couldn't take a fire truck. Ended up taking on somebody's four-wheel drive truck, we got there, thankfully it wasn't on fire. But we thought, like literally wading into the house.
And to Betty's comment, honestly, what is another 50? I'm sure Sally's like, whoa, 50,000, what is another $50,000?
It's not, the discussion on that is not there, Melanie. I just, something has to give, you can't just say, well, yeah, we should have this, we should have that. We have to be responsible.
They're spending $450. I said, spend $500 and get forward with that.
We don't know the numbers, we just know about what it's looking like it could be. We're still doing some proposals, I think is the soonest tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah,
When in 2023 is the contract signed?
before the next price increase.
Isn't it-
How's that?
Possibly, so there'll be town,
There are going to be more that would authorize us to sign a contract,
right?
Okay, in the future.
and very likely it's gonna be, it'll say, we're gonna work the language, but it's gonna be to authorize signing a contract for the purchase of a fire truck. In an amount of up to $500,000, something to that effect. That then allows us the latitude to go to the vendors and lock in.
But I think I heard somewhere there'll also be public hearings. So the public could ask the same kind of questions that we're asking.
Yeah, so that's town meeting.
And know what the choices were.
Right, that's town meeting.
Okay.
That was the non-money article I was talking about, just because we're doing something really weird, signing a contract 2 years in advance and to trying to get ahead of. A bunch of price increases. Again, about 1% per month on average.
It will have a number in it, but it's not to raise money. They're looking to raise money through their capital account.
And how much money is in there now?
About 202, 205. Bring that
What's
ballpark.
that?
202, 102.
Yeah. So this would put it to 302, still a long ways, right? But if you think about it, if we can't sign a contract till after town meeting. And it's 2 years or more out, that's 2 more town meetings. To raise the balance. So if it's 100, 100, 100, boom, you're at 5. That's the idea.
If the wages don't keep going up and up and up and up.
Well, no, and even if wages keep going up, we would like to think that revenues are going up, et cetera. That we keep 100,000 a year in the capital reserve account, same account. Keep that. It's expensive business.
Yeah. So we just make a motion to vote on the fire equipment of $100,000 and the fire building for
I
10,000.
think you have a motion for the full amount.
Yeah.
On the floor.
The full,
The full capital reserve.
Okay,
Are we still discussing or not? Because we're trying to do fire with everything else, and you said there weren't other changes. I did wonder about the recreation fields.
Mhm.
One. 10,000. Budget went from 5,000 to 10. Didn't we just do all the fields? What's, before we approve this
Yeah, so
sheet of paper?
their balance is now down to about 13,000. They still have an unfinished building down there. There's equipment that needs to be purchased for them to maintain the fields. It's a long-term goal. There's always fencing repairs that need to be done. There's looking to redo all but 2 of the dugouts, I think, in order to open them up for security and safety, so that you're able to see through them. And things like that. So they've got, just as everybody else does, a list of things they'd like to see. You get things like pitching machines and things like that, and larger purchases that they're trying to save towards. So your drainage is done, but there's still a lot of field maintenance, and candidly, there's probably 50% of our field maintenance gets done by them right now. But if we donated labor, materials, goods, services, you name it.
What's the unfinished building? I keep seeing it in the book.
So it's the batting cage. There's a storage and batting cage. Yep.
Wasn't there tip money for that? Or ARPA? Didn't they get an ARPA grant? Because you didn't get.
For that.
You didn't get
yeah,
the features, you did batting cages instead.
Again, we paid for the materials, and all the labor was donated.
Right.
And I want to say it was ballpark 10,000.
But I saw somewhere ARPA 30,000 for batting cages.
Yeah, we didn't spend that much. I think that's what it was. But that was to include labor, and then we were able to get contractor to donate labor.
So batting cages wouldn't be part of this, that should be done.
I mean, it's pretty, there's still,
Right, but that's not a reason for, that's not something on their to-do list.
I think the netting and.
the netting's on the to-do list. You've got pitching machines there. We're trying out a portable mound system, so we can get away from the maintenance of mounds. That's another larger purchase. So it's a different scale, I'll say, but they're still there's still a need for them to focus on saving responsibly instead of having to come and say, hey, can we get 40,000 in here? To get this done that.
if we're spending all this money for fire equipment, highway equipment, highway building, why, I mean, we need town trucks to on my road, come out and lay down calcium.
Yeah, so we have in the equipment account for highway, we have about 242,000. The unfortunate thing for highway is, the fortunate thing for highway is that we can buy 2 or 3 trucks for the price of 1 fire truck. And so in this amount right here, if we need to, we can buy a small wheeler to replace the oldest in the fleet, which is about 12 years old right now. It's something that they're saving towards, but we also have to look at the total picture and say, where can we afford to put pressure on? And we can't afford to put pressure. We're worried that fuel and wages is the 2 large factors that we've got this year. And so do we want to send more to the tax base to put more into the savings account of the town as opposed to the people's savings account? We could. There was a brief discussion last night, but I think that's kind of where everybody settled out was, there's a pretty healthy balance in that account right now. Now's not the time to go for more. And we also have the luxury of surplus down the line where you could go and take 100 to pair that with existing funds to bridge that. We're pretty fortunate with the fleet right now, with the exception of 1 truck. And then your other big offer is the grader, which is a fire truck purchase. It's 400,000 plus right now, and so we have to discuss. We're almost into a different subject, but a Bigelow Hill paving project that should have happened that didn't. Covering off on other gravel roads that should be paved in order to not have to grade or to get your gravel roads to a point where you can contract that out at an affordable price, like most other towns do.
How many trucks are in the highway fleet?
4.
Just 4.
3 big wheelers and 1 small.
Just one.
They all.
Maybe you can.
We have, I told them 3 Class 8 pumper, we have a 4-wheel drive. 1-ton truck with a body, it's not a fire truck.
So when you're looking at highway, you also they got a front end load of backhoe.
Well,
You get a grader, those are equal to a vehicle.
well, again, you're only putting 25,000 away and
If it's the pleasure of the budget committee to increase that amount, we can recommend that you increase that amount, and we'll take that back to the select board at the next meeting. They will be reviewing what you vote on tonight.
It's gonna come sooner or later, that's what I'm saying, is. It feels, to me, why not just put it there now? And. Next year not put 50,000, you know? Because nothing's getting cheaper, and our highway department certainly needs trucks and. That's my thought, but
And this came to Public Works, was their recommendation? A road
Oh, that was just my
recommendation?
request.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to look at the total picture, which is your front page, right? And we're balancing out the needs of roads and fire department and everything else, and the wage increases that we've seen this year, I don't think we're gonna see next year. And we have to factor all that into the pressures.
why
The
don't,
board did talk about it last night. I think that it's something that they would look on favorably, but they weren't gonna go and increase the number last night with the budget the way that it's looking right now.
why do you think the wages aren't going to go up next year?
They are, but they're not gonna go up at the rate that we saw them go up at this year.
Everyone's in a contract, seventh contract.
Yes, for the next year, there's gonna be a new union contract, it'll come out 24. But that won't have upfront implications,
What is the fire building thing building up for
a fire department,
on this, the $10,000?
yep. Yep. You save that for 100 years, you still won't have enough.
That's right. And there's gonna be major expenses along the way. I know we think it's new, it's actually 7 years old now. But it'll need a furnace, it will need a roof, it will need a, you know, whatever. That's why we do it. We did it for 40 years and it worked well. Right, about 60% of the building we have.
You can look back to 2018 and see what we were putting away in the coffers. And I've made a concerted effort to try to keep bumping that up every year, but
Right.
last year was the first year that was really indicated that that's our savings account, we need to be looking at that last. And so when we're looking at a budget, local budget that's theoretically up 10%, it might be responsible for us locally to do that, but is that the pressure the taxpayer can withstand? So it's the balance. If you decide you want to take it out of undesignated and designate it, that's your pleasure, and we can look at that later on.
The truck is 150,000. You said 3 times?
Yeah, so
You're
the
talking
price that I have on my desk right now,
Highway trucks, yeah.
is 170.
Yeah.
For the small truck.
And what's the tax reevaluation for?
That is intended to get us a revaluation like what we had in 2016, 2017, where they go around and visit all the homes, pick up lost assessments, and do the reval across the board. It's contracted third party. The last time we did it, I want to say it was in the ballpark of 200,000 to do that. And with the market the way that it is, it's becoming more and more imminent that we continue on that track to save. We were down to 60% of total valuation when we did it the last time, and we shouldn't allow ourselves to get that low.
What are we at now, do you know?
We manually adjusted this last year, the Board of Assessors ordered a manual adjustment, it was a 10% across the board with another 10% compounded on top for mobile homes. They were disproportionately low. And so we got to the 100%, which is why your homestead was back to 20.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought we might have dropped, yeah,
Next year,
yeah, okay, yeah.
Well, then you have frozen taxes now too.
maybe.
Oh, I thought that was a done deal.
No, there's legislative submissions that are looking to actually repeal and replace. Or wholly repeal.
Okay, yeah. All in favor? Yeah,
Was that for the original 210 motion? Madam Chair?
the whole thing, yeah. The whole,
You need to speak out a little bit.
yeah, the whole budget, the 210,
Okay.
that's what.
We will leave if you're all done with fire tonight. You know, the fire things. Thank you. Thank you guys. Appreciate you moving it to the top. We gotta go eat. For our first summer meeting.
Yeah. Glad we rushed it.
Good night.
See you.
Okay, so you want to go back to the previous administration? Sure. There. And a motion to,
I was gonna say, what page you on now? You got me.
yeah, everything's all mixed up.
Flip that, that's the next one. That should be,
Oh, administration
I
anyway.
know, but I just shuffled my people.
That should be underneath your overview.
It should be, but since we pulled everything back in, got it 6
Yeah.
I see that as an index.
So we make motion to approve $311,950.
Are you making the motion?
I guess I am making a motion to approve.
That's the net. You're looking at 404,700.
Where's?
It's further up the page from the 311.
Okay. I see.
That's less revenues, yeah.
Oh, $404,700. Oh. And discussion?
Oh, yeah.
Is it mostly wages and benefits?
Yeah, so up 25,000, of that 19,035 is wages and benefits. And 4,000 of that is software related, which is our Trio system, which is real estate assessment, motor vehicles, clerk, vital records, all of that. Something that we're really forced into. And that's gone up. And then we've also signed with our IT provider for Sophos, which is away from like a amateur McAfee, and then that's a managed per device annually.
They went out of business.
Pardon?
Sophos went out of business.
Well, I don't like Sophos a lot, so I call it Sophos.
Okay. Just wondered.
It's managed IT something. And
I
it goes
thought
up to
they-
the corner every morning when I turn my computer on.
No, I thought they were the best. I was sorry that they went out of business.
And here I go again, I'm gonna ask a lot of questions. The actual for town manager, 87,000, but budgeted 93,
Yep, so the numbers that I sent you and getting them out to you missed 2 warrants,
okay,
pay warrant. So the actuals for me is 93,190.
okay.
So the recommended increase is $4,675, and part of this, you have it, this is all tied to your contract, right?
Correct.
He's guaranteed.
I'm guaranteed 3% with an option for 2 based on performance. So the budget accounts for the 3 plus the 2. Goes into effect in November,
And how long do you have a contract for?
2 more years.
And so this is every year, or is it discussed every year to make the increase?
Every October, I make a request for my performance evaluation, and then they go and review my performance at that time.
And every year you could get 5%.
Up to,
Up to 5.
but you're locked in at 3. Okay,
We have a list of what other towns in the area have for their town managers.
I mean, I don't have it, but I could get that for you. We looked at that last year.
When the contract was actually.
Yeah, we looked at that last year, and I can tell you, everybody around us is renegotiated at or more than I am. And most of them have pension, and I don't have a pension.
You're not.
I remember seeing it last year.
No,
Really?
wow. If it wasn't last year, it was the year before.
He's never gonna leave, that's why. He didn't.
We're working on it across the board. Obviously, fire is gonna be the first one that we're gonna review. Employees that aren't under the union contract are gonna be reviewed, and then when the contract negotiation comes up, we're gonna review that. It's a big part of recruitment. And this has to be part of our long-term plan. And it comes at a nominal increase over what we're paying already. It's 6%. We can enroll an M-PERS, I think, for 9. So if that's a recruitment tool, that's worth 3% more.
And are the wages comparable for everybody else in the building and other departments?
In terms of,
budgeting and what their contracts are for the upcoming year.
correct, they're all built off the contract.
But they're comparable to others, so we're not underpaying people.
Honestly, it's difficult to measure, but you look at our front office staff and their hourly wage is gonna be more than what you'd see in Skowhegan. Skowhegan has Amherst. Things like that. Everybody did get an outside contract, $1 an hour increase this year. So that was above and beyond what they had negotiated in their contract. Public Works got 2, so you'll see that in their budget versus spend. They got a $2 an hour outside raise. So, and that was all in an effort to retain.
And have you lost anybody besides?
We were able, the big concern was precipitated by looking at a sign-on bonus for Public Works and not wanting to give a sign-on bonus to new people that already been wanted to. So we went, anyway, long story short, $1 an hour was given to Public Works employees and it was given to other employees under the union contract. And that was outside the contract in order to try to keep them and fill the seats of the truck at Public Works. And we are fully staffed at Public Works with everyone resident of the town, or with the exception of our one who's been here for someone else.
It's great.
And finance, is that key? Or,
Finance belongs solely to the bookkeeper. There's a portion of the employee's salary that gets billed to administration, and there's a small fraction that goes to airport and a small that goes to sewer. Yeah, so that's not his whole salary.
Does the same apply to you? Do you get anything for the award or what you get? What was?
You see what I make right here. You do not see what he makes right here.
I think usually when we do this too, we're not saying that we're doing a review or anything. We're trying to understand the cost of the different offices. And if there's, we can't do anything about the contract and never would. But I think it would be interesting to see what other towns are doing because you see the stories in the newspaper and it's like, geez, Skowhegan's getting a lot less than Norridgewock or, you know, just.
Right. It's difficult and I would hesitate to put that out there in a document and say, okay, board, let's go for it. Because you can go to Skowhegan and she's probably making what I'm making. And she's, I mean, I don't want to get too far into it. She's got a different background, also has an executive assistant. So there's another $50,000-$60,000 a year position that's benefited with retirement that's sitting under theoretically serving as a buffer. And is that the most effective use of your money? So, and you can also talk about number of hours worked and things like that you just can't put on paper.
Is this the town clerk position too?
So I'm the town clerk.
Yeah, no, she's there.
There's no extra money. What you see is what I made last year.
So you're the town manager, the town clerk, the financial administrator, and
The cemetery superintendent and the airport administrator and the sewer administrator and the road commissioner and the E911 addressing officer and the EMA director.
okay.
So all that's in your contract is part of their.
And you want to look at other towns and their town, their fatalities. Town manager. I'm also the tax collector.
We probably work 12, 15-hour days, 4, 5 days a week.
I know I'm at 10:45 last night.
It doesn't gonna be too early tonight.
Oh, we can go a bit beyond 9, right? 8:30 for you.
subscriptions, why did that increase to 1,050?
Yeah, so Zoom is a big one. The Zoom webinar program, which we've been using, which is really what's essential for us to hold meetings and allow for remote participation is ballpark $600 to $700. That cost has been absorbed by FEMA through grants the last 2 years. That grant system is drying up for COVID related expenses. So that's here. We also have
That's the Zoom.
our Amazon Prime subscription, which is ballpark 140. There's one more in there. Becky, what was my other subscription? Amazon,
Zoom.
Zoom, and something else. We have an editing software, a grammar editing software for newsletters and publications and letters.
I think that what the term was.
That's, I think it's $99 a year.
I question subscriptions because the library is $150 and I'm like, what's he doing with $1,000 worth of magazines?
Right, that, well, I was thinking the same thing. The other piece I've got is electric and heating fuel. If everybody has gone to heat pumps and there's a 49% increase in January, how is everybody going to heat for an additional $100?
So in an ideal world, we're not gonna be this is a guide to how we're gonna budget. And in a perfect world, we're not gonna use other lines within the budget fully, and so that would cover overages. We also, it's not a favorite of everybody's, but we turn temperatures back. We play games depending upon the price of fuel, what's in the tank downstairs and what we're paying on electric. That might be on or off, what roads are open or closed. Those are all games that you end up playing.
Are you locked in at a rate? Do you use like, Constellation for,
For electricity.
yeah,
Yeah, Peter brokered that every year and signs on that, but I mean, it just hasn't been favorable to anybody. With the temperatures the way that they are, we're fortunate, but we've converted everything to LED. And made those kind of upgrades, and we just try to do the best that we can, but.
It just seems like a little.
I was surprised at the legal. You spent 4,500 this year and you're budgeting 2,000 next year.
Hopeful.
That's what it is.
The-
according to the reason time.
So honestly, the administration budget absorbs a lot of the outsides, so I could have a personnel problem at I'll say wastewater, because that's an easy one for me. I don't have a personal problem with wastewater. Say I did it. Depending upon the condition of that department's budget, I may absorb the legal bill. There might be general management guidance that comes out to certain situations, and I theoretically would pay that. This was, I want to say, largely union driven in the last year. So rather than portioning it out to other departments, we just assumed it as administration.
And general supplies,
So that's just a catch-all. We never budget for that. One could argue that everything could be bucketed into something, but that's just how it's accounted for, bookkeeping. It's the unknown. And again, that's something that you use the leftovers of the other portions to pay for those kind of things. It could be a chair, and that would be leftover. It would be general supply. It's just an accounting method or habit.
Cleaning services have gone up quite a lot.
Good. And we had, it was even more than that for expense, but we had a large chunk of that absorbed by, FEMA grants. We've got, COVID as bad as it's been, has provided us this kind of with a lot, because I've chased after it, and probably $100,000 worth of grants. The library is going to have the expense of the glass around that coming back into the library fund in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. Things like that we've been able to chase after to offset these past expenses and put it back into general fund and to the emergency management account.
What is the awards and recognition? Went from
Yeah,
budget of 500 to actually spending 3,300.
yeah, so that would be the fire chief's retirement. And a good chunk of that is the fire chief's retirement. That came at a bill of, I don't know, $5,000 or $6,000 to do that.
Or what did we do?
We had a catered event
Okay,
at the fire station.
that was the one day Sunday brunch thing.
Yeah, Saturday, Sunday. We did that, and what's left sitting on this line here is actually, I had 3 sponsors for the event, so it really cost us about $500-600 for that event, and there's a sponsorship check outstanding. And
So
then
the
we
actual
bought-
won't be 3,300.
It shouldn't be.
Okay.
It shouldn't be, but we bought 2 axes, the ceremonial axes came out of that. When we do the presentations at town meeting, that will come out of that. If there's a new business plaque, that comes out of that. So it's really a very small amount of money for what we do with it.
I should know this, but what is the tip offset?
So when the tip was built in it, it allowed for $5,000 a year offset the cost of me administering the tip. So there's $5,000 every year that just gets taken from the tip and applied to the administration expense to offset my salary. Yep.
And I have one question about the revenue. Interest income went from 6 to 15. Did you find a really good vehicle, or is that could you put more money in the account?
No, I swung $1 million into a CD at an exorbitant rate over what we made last year. We were making nickels last year. And this year, I just negotiated, I have to look at my board, but I want to say across the board, it's 2% on all of our accounts. And so that is a far cry from where we were at 0.2 or 0.3 last year.
And if you
So-
looked, are you looking now? Because I just talked yesterday, you get 4%.
Yeah, so we'll stagger and things like that, and what we can do as a town is different than what you can do privately. You can find a Discover account online. Okay, great, keep it under 500,000. Okay, I'll keep it under 500. Can't do it as a town. You really have to deal with the bank and then the insurance. Of the bank. You can get a more aggressive personal rate than you can the town rate on an investment, but on a bank investment. But I think when you look at your day-to-day accounts, the fact that I'm able to have 40 some odd accounts at the bank and they're willing to apply a blanket rate of say 2.5% to that, it's pretty good.
I've got a question on the lien costs,
Mhm.
and then under revenue, lien cost.
Yeah.
Ex-
Yeah, so when we file liens, that's another thing that gets, tax liens.
Mhm.
That expense of filing the liens at $19 a piece comes out of us. When you come in and pay that lien off, that money comes back in. And so it's largely dependent upon how many people are delinquent in their taxes and then the frequency at which they pay. So there is always some leftover. We had more people pay their taxes this year than we did last year. So it's difficult to budget. You try to do the best that you can. What goes in comes out net at the end of the day. Plus a few dollars, I guess.
And why is mail fee not included in the postage?
Pardon?
I know it's mail fee. Why is that not included in the postage?
So-
Is that broken out?
Yeah, no, mail fee is a revenue, and that's something that I brought in at COVID, because people are calling, they want things mailed to them. And or now you get snowbirds and they want to register their car through the mail. Well, I didn't think it was appropriate that we're wasting time, materials and postage to start mailing stuff to people's homes. So you want something mailed to your house, if it's a re-registration, it's $5. We don't care. If it's plates, it's gonna be $10. Because we're paying that postage. It's a convenience and we're willing to do that for you, but we're gonna charge you on that. And we have a handful of people, and if we didn't have a fee, it would be abused.
So,
Make
so you want a
motion
motion to approve
to approve
the administrative budget?
It wasn't, I think it was.
That wasn't, okay.
and take a vote now. All in favor? That's everybody. Yeah.
Nice that the select board is holding at their same year after year. That's nice.
So we gonna do elected officials then?
I think a motion that we accept the 18,100 select board recommendation.
I'll second it.
Discussion? Seeing none? Do we want to vote? Make a motion? Yes. Everybody? Yeah? I don't know, maybe? Tax. Nothing else.
I make a motion that we accept the $25,000 budget.
Second.
I have one question about the tax mapping.
Yeah, I had that too.
Yep, so there was a late payment in 2021 that got paid in 2022. That's what's driving the overage there. And so we double paid that payment in 2022. We won't end up paying that but once in 2023.
Anything else? Make a motion to vote. All in favor? That's everything. Okay,
I make a motion to approve
Second it.
the budget of, where it is, 64. 64, 4, 8,
Exactly.
115, 562.
Fire hydrants, what's up there?
But the fire hydrant is billed to us by the water district. We had not, when you had your forms, we'd not released the second payment on that. So year to date, we spent the 85.4. That is billed to us. The water district can bill the municipality up to 30% of their budgeted operating. And the water district bills us the full 30% of operating.
And their operating hasn't went up for 4 years.
Correct. It's based off, it's that in rate case.
Which-
With that, I mean, this year will probably be the last year of 85.4. I think they're gonna ask the rate case this year.
And what's the animal welfare officer?
So we receive funds from fines, we receive the late fees, and that goes into an account, and that just builds. And it can only be used to offset expenses associated with the animal welfare. And so we've just been using that. I mean, it was up to like 50 grand at one point in time, so we've just been putting $4,000 a year, and that's typically what flows in and flows out. Just to keep that at the tax base.
But did the control officer get a $500 raise?
Well, it's budgeted because what we do is we pay him a flat amount every month. Then he charges his mileage, so we pay him his mileage, and then what's not paid out of the mileage of what he makes.
So what's the travel line?
That's what's backed out of that. So if you look at the difference between the actual, the animal control and the mileage or the travel, that's gonna totally a round number. Should totally a round number. Right about. Because he makes $400 a month.
Right.
Yeah.
Make a motion or vote to approve. Everybody.
First, motion to accept the amount in $770,950.
I second it.
Any discussion?
Okay.
How many employees are there?
These just, is it fully staffed now?
A lot of it's gonna be the out of cycle wage adjustments. Your wages and benefits totals approximately 15,750 of the increase. Your other big one is vehicle fuel plus 10,000. And winter maintenance, winter roads is plus 10,000. And then it's 2,000 extra for building maintenance as well as striping. Striping being Wood Hill Road and your crosswalks downtown.
So the out of cycle is, maybe you got $10,000 for raise money during the year or something?
Well, so this isn't me, this is public works employees. So.
No, not you,
Oh.
you, the budget.
Yeah, so what we had last year, what the budget was built for was fully staffed. And making what they were gonna contractually make. They got the contractual increase January 1st, and then throughout the course of the year, they got an additional $2. So that's what the incremental is in the budget versus this year. And I also have an employee that does not have a CDL, going through classes right now to get that, and that's gonna be another out of contract increase when he's successful. We're gonna be optimistic here. And that'll be another one, and hopefully it's gonna be the next one.
Can I ask a question why the drug and medical testing is here and not in the fire budget even?
So there is I believe there's a medical testing in the fire, but it's not drug testing. And that is because they're not required at fire to have CDLs. And so, no, they're exempt. They're exempt. Some of them do have them, but we don't do that. In public works, they all have to be drug tested with 0 tolerance. We have to have all enrolled in a pool, so we pay the service on the pool, and then they pay extra when they get called up. And then I've also, in the last 2 years, really aggressively gone after pre-employment exams for, to acknowledge the BFOQs, the bona fide occupational qualifications of you actually need to have this ability to do this job, because we expect a lot from them. And candidly, we've been in legal trouble before because we didn't exhaust that. And so it's a protector for the town. We've also more commonly sought return to work letters at the town's expense in order to make sure that they're safely returning to work and protect their workers' comp.
Are you, the equipment repair, you guys spending that much money? Really?
Yeah, there's it doesn't take long to get away, and you're in the battle constantly of, do we go and ask to buy something new or do we throw money at it?
Right.
The last thing that we had was the backhoe.
Yeah.
Here we are.
And so the general consensus seems to be, as long as we can take the parts and we can do labor in-house, we'll do that the best that we can. But what really drives those numbers are when your cat or your cat vendor actually comes in to visit.
Oh,
And you
okay.
get that $1,000 oil change, which could cost you that, which should avoid your warranties and things like that. So the electrical troubleshooting is a big cost.
Okay, I know the service, I didn't realize you brought a lot of service guys in. That's
Sometimes you have to,
Oh, no, you do. I totally get that. Me,
hope it's under warranty,
yeah,
even if it is, you're still paying $200 or $300 for travel.
no, I understand that. I just
Oh,
didn't.
I hate to see them drive by.
Service trucks are expensive.
So take a vote. And all in favor? No problem, buddy. We're on contingencies.
Cemetery,
Oh, cemetery.
motion to accept the amounts recommended by select board for $5,850.
Second it.
Discussion?
Their money last year, was that?
A lot of stuff. They have lofty intentions
Yeah.
and they've actually done a lot of work in the last year or two. It's just, everybody's got their own pull in this direction or that direction, and it just didn't happen. So but they're just, that money lapsed into the general fund and they're asking for it back.
Yeah.
And this was also consideration in the capital reserve with their larger repair project that they're targeting, which they couldn't get a contractor to come and repair stones. Hurriedly.
We didn't buy that tablet after all.
Yeah, not to get into it, that wasn't responsive at the time.
Okay.
It was a research to see what's going to be compatible and more user friendly.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot.
Buying an iPad or something like that to be able to download software, so volunteers from cemetery committee or historical or anybody go out to the cemeteries, take pictures of the stones, record that information, cross-check that with our vital records in here, and be able to maintain a good database. Be valued to historical society, still be made in the town office.
So my son is big into ancestry, and he loves seeing the stones on ancestry.com, so
Does he want to be a junior cemetery person? or-
maybe junior, we had to go visit the one over by on the Child Road and look at all the people there.
Yeah, that's one of them.
He may be a summer project.
Well, I think the historical will go after.
Okay.
He's also coming to ancestry big time.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Well, and but
Yeah.
the whole.
Yeah, the whole thing.
We have a Sophie May library for you.
Mhm.
And he loves to read.
Any more discussion? Take a vote. All in favor? Everybody. Bring sister.
On the motion that we approves the budget of $5,600 for general assistance.
Can I ask a question on this? I don't know where it really fits in, but the push for the food shelter
Mhm.
and how desperate that was, and we needed income for it and so on and so forth. It doesn't really I didn't see it anywhere.
Yeah, so it's not in here. I think the general consensus was it's not gonna come from tax dollars, direct tax dollars. The proposal to purchase the property was to use the rescue plan funds. I have funds committed already, probably to fund 50,000. Private funds. And then there's very likely another 50 to 100 in line to secure once something takes more form. To be able to execute on that, but the answer is turnkey or what's perfect. And so we're just waiting for that right now.
But you still have to buy freezers and everything. That'll come out of the 50 or?
So there's been funds approved from ARPA right now to acquire property. We're not acquiring that property. That money is still there. So it could come from there. But there are also private sources that are going to be easier to access if we locate the building and are able to close on it.
As I noticed, the one is still posted for sale, so we didn't end up purchasing that.
Well, we pulled out as a violation, but not on our end, but on the sellers as a violation of the purchase sales.
You're looking at other period, we'll have something in mind.
We're looking at other areas.
I thought you were saying that it would be like a $10,000 to $15,000 a year.
Operational commitment.
Yeah, so where is that?
So that would show up customarily under your social services, which is going to be renamed. Mine, it would be under social services.
Okay.
And there is no annual contribution to that this year. We're not, they have not spoken to us. We're, as far as we know, this is a thrift shop and a mobile food access point. They bring food in and they take food out.
I thought you said there was a $7,500 commitment for one of the food banks that
They had said
we
they were,
had to.
they had said they were going to send us a bill. We
Okay.
have never received a bill. I'm not going to ask for
Okay.
Is
it. They can't shut our lights off.
Well, they can stop feeding people too.
No, they can't actually.
So they can't.
No, they cannot. It's just not what's best for. No, they have access to food through contracts that are federally subsidized.
Right,
Problem is that they're located about 17 miles away from Norridgewock proper. Forget about outer Sandy River or Oak Hill or things like that. It's not conducive to meeting the needs of our low income population.
right.
How many people actually apply for that? General assistance?
It varies. Probably this last year, we've put out 50 applications, actually reviewed 15, and approved 3 or 4. It's very, very difficult to meet the guidelines, the income guidelines that the state sets. And there are so many other programs that you could qualify for.
Does that COVID money now is, so do we have 340 left in COVID funds?
Probably 180.
So is 100 of that now designated for the food pantry?
So it's still there.
So 100. Okay,
It's still 180.
for the food pantries.
No,
I was just wondering if we're not buying the property, are we tying up with that?
no, it's not. I mean, they could reassign it to a different property if we found it. It has to be held through public hearing, and the select board has the authority to spend on it. It's not, the public hearing is on that specific project in that specific location.
We voted on that too, right?
Yes, to accept a piece of property.
So. Did we vote to accept any piece of property or that specific?
You have to vote to accept that specific piece of property. And it came with the conditions that it was the select, it gave the ability for the select board to accept that specific piece of property.
Right.
On terms best for the town, which gave them the ability to pull out.
But we would. But we would, if there was another property.
We have to go to.
We'd have to go to
Yeah, and that's kind of why I said, where is it in here? There's no
Right.
money.
Right.
Funded for that, you know,
So we don't, I don't believe that we need to have that in our regular operating budget this year. I think there's other funding sources, whether it's through ARPA or TIP or private donors, that we can get that taken care of.
Well, it can't be too, because that's nonprofit.
No, it would be an entity of the town to cover expense. And it could arguably be economic development and, you know, in the same way the fire station. is.
Economic development. A food pantry.
Exactly, taking care of the people and keeping them here. Protecting your workforce, providing basic needs, all by her economy. Even the poor have to eat.
anything else? Take a vote, all in favor? Recreation?
Motion that we accept the recommendation of the select board at $22,925.
Second.
No one second.
I did.
Yeah.
You did, okay. Thank you.
Mhm. So what's the difference between the budgeted and the actual? Why is there such a fluctuation again? And then we're going even more next year if we didn't spend.
Yeah, so the actual amount as of yesterday was 16,557. One of the increases that that is in that is a baseball softball expense, which was a portable pitching mound that the rec committee just approved the purchase of in the last 4 weeks or so, when they met to do this year's budget. And then we also have basketball expenses, which hadn't been paid being the start of the season. So that's what largely drove up that number to the 16,557. The proposal for this year's budget from the committee is in your basketball wage line. It's $1,800, and that is an increase for the director. As a director, that depending upon the program, it's $1,000. It's $1,000 soccer, basketball, softball, and baseball, or baseball, softball paired with $1,000 going to whoever helping with the fields. The committee voted that it was overdue for a raise. So that is what is included in their request. And then there's also the consideration to add funding for 4 travel ball teams to be included and hosted here in Norridgewock, which covers, I believe, the cost of officiating for 2 games per team, plus a nominal fee for the team itself and to actually be a team in the area. And what the rec committee hasn't looked at yet, which would be a part of this next cycle for them, is to look at what they're going to charge to participate in the travel. We don't charge for regular rec, but there appears that there's going to be a modest fee for in-town participants and then a more aggressive fee for out-of-town participants in this proposed travel program, if it's rolled out.
And I think that proposal would pretty much offset, like, we're talking the 54, is that baseball softball line? No, that's not right. Talking about.
No, that's coming out of basketball wages. Your other rental line that bumped, the equipment rental bumped up $1,100, and that's the porta potties at the fields. And that's one of the biggest complaint generators of all of rec. That's like my kids on the team, it's the porta potties full and filling. And we have, you know, we could have 400 or 500 people at the ball field in any given Saturday.
Mhm.
And so it doesn't take long. And so one of the things that everybody said across the board, you're gonna see it in parks too, is we need those porta potties cleaned twice a week. And so that's what's in the request here. And people, parents take their own toilet paper. Don't they?
Oh, I believe that.
I keep it in my pocket when I go.
That's pretty standard for porta potties.
Yeah, try using an Alphonse Center one, it's 10 times. That's back in Tracy or that field. But I think you'll see from here, like John was almost alluding to, that. we're-
Trying to, but
Yeah.
I said.
We're gonna see revenues to offset the increase because of the potential fees for the travel kids, because say there's 4 teams at $50 a player, that's, you know, a couple $1,000 right there.
Is that Norridgewock kids paying?
Norridgewock kids would pay a nominal fee, and then out of towns instead would be a more aggressive rate. And honestly, it's 50-50 right now for most of the travel teams.
I hear some discussion where the in-town kids would not have to pay travel fees.
They don't pay rec fees. The travel fees is different, and it was a long conversation with the rec committee about it not being open to everybody. It's a tryout based, largely tryout based. You do have to have some ability to travel, and so it's limited, and so that shouldn't be free. It shouldn't be taxpayer funded, but for it to flow through the organization, it makes sense. And we're also, there's an unmet need in the largely girls grades 4 through 7, I think, where they don't necessarily have a team to be able to plug in. And so we would help bridge that gap. Could be 5 to 7, I can't remember.
I think it was at least 7, right?
Yeah, it'd be great.
So that's like having enough people to play baseball. You've got to get some Skowhegan kids, that kind of thing. It's not that they're traveling to a game in Winthrop. It's
Yeah, mostly, at least on my kids' team, it's Skowhegan, Cornville, maybe Madison kid.
With the town, if somebody wanted to. Was good and was on the travel team, would the town pick up the expense if that person was unable to pay that fee?
Yes, we don't, candidly, we don't talk about that. We let the program director use her discretion. It's not about exposing these kids or the parents. It's not the kids' fault. And that's why we don't even talk about fees with our kids anymore. And Mercer and Smithfield followed us in suit after last year, and they don't charge their kids anymore. The town's pay direct.
what was this donation, speaking of paying kids? 3150.
So that is actually not going to be a department offset. That's going to actually stay with the rec. Just as all donations stay with the department, but you had a large New Balance donation this year of at least $1,000. I don't know, you get random donations from people. And I couldn't tell you specifically right offhand what they were. But somebody could pass away and they'd say Norridgewock Rec, and we see that. Or big bats, could be big bats. The nonprofit arm, standalone arm of the baseball softball boosters, and they could have written something back to the town to reimburse us for an expense.
And you said the baseball softball was 7,000 requested. That's to rebuild the ball fields.
No, that's strictly to run the baseball softball program.
It is.
One of the biggest expenses there is the Cal Ripken fee for the older kids.
Okay.
And they go to Skowhegan, and there's charter fees and insurances and referee stuff where it's still rec and it's open to everybody, but it comes at a greater cost.
And they have a mandated fee that the town pays, so the kids don't have to pay.
Oh, the other thing with donations, sorry, is the gap on sponsorships. So this last year, we started with the team sponsorships. We're not charging them the cost of the shirt. It's a cost per team, and so now the program is able to raise a little bit of extra money. So instead of saying Lynch Landscaping, it's $9.50 a shirt. So you owe us for 12 shirts. You know, it could be $300 to support it, and it makes it a lot cleaner in terms of numbers and accounting, and then the balance of that stays with the rec program.
Take a vote. Everybody, all in favor?
I'm gonna abstain.
Parks. Make a motion to approve the town manager's request of 11,150.
Second.
What do you want?
Parks, am I out?
Yeah, Parks.
I was gonna say, am I on?
Parks, yeah.
You said that again, Parks?
You say it better. Oh.
So discussion, anybody? I thought Usula Days was not funded, it was just donation.
So we base fund and then we fundraise as well. So the cost of Usula Days is a lot more than what you'll see at 2,000.
Right.
Probably the cost of Usula Days is in the ballpark of 10 or 12. And there is a reserve account for Usula Days that helps pay for, there's a sound system that they have now, or megaphones and things like that. And that goes to try to feed that, but the baseline that we try to put is at 2,000. So you, right there, you're looking at a doubling of the porta potty expense at Usula Park, but it also includes the addition of 2 porta potties at Ashwood Wind Park.
So it's really an ATV trail item,
I'm not gonna respond to that.
okay? But is that, it's that park that we're talking about?
It's in the Ashley J. Family
Yeah,
Memorial
yeah.
Park. It will have a 2-bay porta potty insert area.
Okay.
Folks can use.
It doesn't need cover.
It's gonna, there's already an allocation of funds to have a structure so that they insert and less subject to vandalism.
Down at the boat launch too?
Martin Street.
No, I mean, you're talking about it needs a structure or a hat,
That's
it's
it.
going to have a structure, is there one down here?
No, those are chained to the fence down there.
Okay,
There's
Yeah.
discussion and funding approved for another structure down at Usula Park.
okay,
That's a separate funding mechanism.
because I know I've been down there voting and
And you still.
we can really use cleaning every day down there during the summer,
It
I
was
think,
full at the start of Usula Day.
Yeah. and.
What happened with the holiday stroll? Is that another one you get funds back or?
No. The holiday stroll is not, we don't get, we seek support, financial participation, all of that. And it comes back in the form of businesses participating. There was not one dime of donation for the stroll this year.
It's a nice community event, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And what we found out was the advertising and things like that. We asked so much out of our businesses for Usula Days and they actually show up with checkbooks and participation and everything. And the stroll's just nice to say, hey, and honestly, we were giving them stuff for people to give away. And
I just wondered why it cost 5,700 and yet the budget for the coming year, just 1,000.
Yeah.
because those numbers were reversed, that's the Usula Days number. Sorry, I'm working off a different spreadsheet over here.
Okay. That was a past
Usula Days, okay,
Usula Days had a cost of $5,700 on your page. The stroll had a cost of $946.97.
anything else? Other discussion? All in favor? Library, yeah. Make motion to approve $46,030 requested as the town manager for the library.
Good.
You're doing the trustee request. 46030 or the, which,
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, the town. Oh, trustee, okay. And so I'll do the town manager request at 43,735.
or the select board at 45.
what is the difference?
So- The select board used my proposal, which I developed before the trustees had submitted their request. The select board said they liked my request over the trustees, but that they liked the trustees' request for programming. So they took my budget and then upped the amount on the programming line from the $700 of last year to the $2,000 requested by the trustees.
So what are the plans for programming? Or should we take?
Well, I didn't know because you had only 700 and what did you think you didn't want to do Usula, Drew and his friends?
No, I just had left it as a number from last year.
Okay,
And
So,
candidly, the library has a lot of pockets of money that,
but we don't want to expend somebody's memorial money to have Drew and his animals.
I mean, you could, especially if
But-
you really like the kids, but
But we don't, because
That
we
was
don't have to
the-
get to that here, but that was not the purpose of somebody giving that much money.
well,
And as the person attending, that was the biggest hit.
Yeah, it was a big hit, so we knew we wanted to do it again, so we put it in there in the budget. And then we have our regular things. Chewonki was not well attended this year, but we're also thinking, we didn't know there was a tournament with 500 extra kids on the ball field while we were trying to push snakes or something. So we just have to watch the scheduling in the future. We're also looking at Allagash. They're just different programs this year that we'd like to do. Maybe it won't be Chewonki again, it'll be something else. We've all looked up other ideas, but we have, I think it's $750 is what Drew and his animals cost, so that's in there. Plus, we always had 700. And also there, and I don't know how we do this after the fact, we were told that the budget didn't change in terms of the salary. And so everything would stay the same, and I see you made minor adjustments to workers' comp and things like that, so ours will be lowered when we match your numbers for. We had 325 for, is it workman's comp?
unemployment,
And you have 150, so right
Right.
there's some money.
Right.
You go down the line, we also looked up the seminar that somebody has gone to in the past, used to cost 350, now it costs 395, so that's why we had more money in there for that. We thought, I agree, and I don't know if we fix this now or make it for next year. We had money in there for subscriptions, and actually that could go into the book fund. That was the suggestions. So that 175, what I'm saying is the library board would agree to, just so you know. And the other big thing was the programming, and then also heat was just a total guess. I think Richard gave us the numbers. That's the biggest difference in the budget really is energy related utilities.
we
Besides,
developed those numbers siloed. We
What?
came back with 3,500 and I had 3,500 on a separate spreadsheet that you'd never seen. I did not see your budget and you did not see mine when we budgeted.
so aren't we good?
Right?
I'm slow on the draw on that one. But it seems like ours heat costs and things were more than I saw projecting for other departments. In terms of the cost of energy and things like that, I just it seemed like it was. Anyway, we could play games with the getting the heating costs and things like that down. But what I wonder is in the program, and it applies to other things too. It's going to apply to the road, I think, is what's printed that people are voting on at the town meeting. It'll say town manager's request, or it'll say select board and committees request. Are those two numbers?
No, there'll be a
Budget.
number and then will be it. It'll say
It'll
select
be-
board recommends 45,035. Budget committee recommends.
And those will be the two numbers. Okay. So, and then the one that gets, so what people are voting on, I heard it's the highest of the two numbers. So in this case, the
No,
number
it's
is
the same.
different because of programming, unless you're gonna adjust yours. If people voted for the budget, we would get the $2,000 for programming.
So the select board, as of right now, would be warranting an article that included the 2,000 for programming.
So, but the current motion on the floor is for 43,735.
Right.
Right.
So we can oppose that and we can go back and.
Sounds like.
Well, why on this one would you go with the town managers and all the other ones? that we
So
talked
that's
about?
what we're saying.
Yeah, I missed,
So we're gonna vote it down.
vote it down and then go back,
Okay,
because I didn't understand.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
So Kara made a motion and nobody has seconded it.
Oh, so it fails. for lack of a second.
Okay, perfect. So somebody else can make a motion.
Should I make a motion to accept the trustees requested $46,030?
Discussion.
I abstain.
It's all been discussed.
Okay.
take a vote, all in favor,
So and then
is everybody?
really what needs to happen is the trustees need to go to the board and see if they'll change.
No, I'm gonna go back to the select board and tell them that this is one that you need to look at. And they can say, no, we're not doing it, but they'll do it. They'll increase the number so the budget committee can be represented on the warrant.
Okay, code enforcement. Let me look at the total first. Make a motion to approve 49,450 as requested by the town manager.
Seconded.
Discussion.
Is it, or is it 52 or 50?
52.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. And I'm sorry, who seconded? Did anybody second?
I did.
Okay.
52 or 50. Nope. Okay. So here we are. This is the other half of the fireman,
Correct.
and this is for 20 hours. Okay. And he gets health insurance on both?
Half of his health insurance is paid through code and half of it's paid through fire.
Okay. And you can legally do that even and make him a,
So he's a full-time employee of the town of Norridgewock.
okay,
It's just a matter of what he's doing that day.
okay.
Job assignment.
Does he try and keep track of the 20 hours?
I know we don't have any ability to do this, but is the planning board any more open to start charging fees now that we have a significant expense here? Is that not?
We don't charge fees.
No,
Well,
we have $500 worth of fees for the entire year. Just, it's like, I mean, just for one permit by rule in any of the towns down there, it's 300, so it's just crazy to me, but again, we're not the planning board, but I just.
So it was probably 5 years ago, the budget committee, I just wrote planning board. The planning board wanted the fees got. Seems to be user friendly. The problem is when you're doing after the fact, permits only double. So you can go build a house, the permit fee is $25. And if you don't get a permit to build your house, it's $50.
you don't have to tear it down.
Theoretically, you could, but on a $50, on a $25 penalty, we're not gonna probably move to court to say, yeah, you know, you could, but not likely. If you build a garage, beautiful garage, it's $10.
What if it's like too close to the river or something like that?
Too bad.
You have to move on it and the state would help us move on it. But it's just the court system in the last 3 years is not friendly to land use. So.
Yes, we
consensus
can-
of The budget committee to request the planning board review fees.
Yeah, that would be wonderful and
Yeah.
definitely increase.
Put it towards the new truck.
Put in the time.
Right.
Right now, we're. Ridiculous amounts for everything.
Yeah,
We'll pay a fee for it.
right.
So are you paying the code enforcement officer, his mileage? Is that what?
Yeah, he gets a stipend every month in the same way that I did. $50 a month.
He doesn't have a town vehicle.
You want to drive a fire truck through this?
Why not?
He could get his hours, right?
Exactly.
I mean-
Dual purpose.
It's a truck you keep things going up and down.
Well. No,
It's not just him. that
no.
drives around.
I don't go there. Okay. So is there any more discussion? Would you like to take a vote? All in favor? All in favor, everybody? Planning board?
I make a motion that we accept the $2,000. Request for budget. I'll second that.
The legal fees. Obviously, we know what's gone on so far, but why are we back down to 500 for this year? You don't
suppose that with all the grain coming,
So, there is a proposed medical retail marijuana proposal that's gonna appear on the warrant. It'll be taken care of by secret ballot in the voting booth or by absentee ballot. Legal has already been addressed with this. The legal bill we got here was related to the cost of developing solar regulations and integrating into the site plan.
Yeah.
What we're looking at right now is pairing the opt-in for medical retail marijuana, medical marijuana retail, to consider a moratorium side by that for the planning board, then to look at that. Seems pretty cookie cutter, if that was what was gonna be, in terms of finding the regulation and putting it into our existing ordinance, and then that goes back before voters. The thought was that the 1,000 plus the 500 would be sufficient, in the same way that it was almost sufficient for the development of solar. And candidly, the planning board doesn't know that they're gonna be probably looking at developing an ordinance related to medical marijuana retail. But that's only if the people pass in May, in March.
take vote. All in favor?
I make a motion to change the name of social services.
We're going to local philanthropy. Did you watch last night's meeting?
What?
Did you watch last night's meeting?
I did,
Oh, I was gonna say it's topic of discussion.
yeah, no, I really. That's not why I said it though, because I think of it every time, every year. I look at this.
What did they do for Memorial Day this year? I didn't even.
The Memorial Day expense, a total of $254.43 at year end, included the planters. They ordered those from Trees to Please, and the flags and the wreaths,
Okay,
and that's it.
well, the flags are separate.
No, the flags for the monument,
Okay.
flags for downtown and everything. Yeah.
I make a motion that we accept the $7,000 request.
Why does the town give the $3,000?
We didn't, that's the request that I have.
But why would they put it in?
They've requested it. It's not that they're getting it. That's just the organization request. Come after town meeting, the board will get this file right here with all the financial information from all the requesting organizations and a letter of what they want, why they want it, who they serve, what's the value of their service and things like that.
Second.
So they've asked
The request.
for 13, you're budgeted for 7, so half of these things will be approved and half of them won't.
Mhm.
And that's at the pleasure of the board. as well.
Oh.
So we're just approving the amount that
As a whole.
they would do.
You can see where the funds went last year, right, under your 2022 actuals. I can tell you this year where the downtown flags is gonna be a very nominal request. That covers flags at town buildings as well as the downtown, but we're not gonna be doing downtown flags next year because we're gonna be in the middle of reconstruction of the sidewalks.
I just have a minor semantic thing when I hear it. It's at the pleasure of the board. Is there some other word beside pleasure? Because they're acting on behalf of the people of the town. It's not at their pleasure. It should not be at their pleasure. Just a technical.
I don't like that we don't have the respect to put our flags out because we're doing construction.
So they're just gonna get damaged by equipment coming and going. They already get damaged as it is, and it's a controversial thing that we do. Because they get tattered, they get caught up, they end up on the ground, and people find it outrageously offensive.
Yes, but if you pay somebody to go out and put them up and take them
So
down,
we don't
that's
allow.
so that's all volunteer. And nobody,
Yeah, so because Route 2 and the sidewalks are gonna be under reconstruction, And there's, in the grant proposal from the state is that we're gonna have decorative lamp posts to replace the existing lamp posts. Those would then have flagpoles on them that would be far more conducive, far more attractive for flags.
Just gonna be a pause.
Right.
Okay, but that just feels disrespectful. I don't know.
Yeah, but
To
there's
me.
construction going on, they're gonna
Yeah,
be
but-
knocking it down,
Why wouldn't you go out and put it up before Memorial Day, take it down after Memorial?
because
Day?
there's construction going on.
Right, but for the day or the weekend, I
Who
mean.
has time to do that if not to do it? Honestly, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I wondered that too.
I mean. The request is $7,000 for the department. If you'd like to weigh in on individual organizations that are requesting, I think you can go to attend a select board meeting in April. Rather than, this is why we've gone to the lump sum in this department, because we get caught up in each of the organizations.
What is the children's center? Is there a children's center?
Yeah. And down in Augusta.
That's what I wondered, how many of these are local?
They probably serve.
There's a located
But it doesn't,
I think it's outside the scope of what we're looking at.
because we're not gonna approve that actual money.
Yeah, they're located at one Alden Avenue.
And then the select board decides what they wanna.
They provide quality programming to young children with special needs and their
We're just
families.
saying, we're giving the select board $7,000
So it's something
to
there.
use for.
For Norridgewock residents.
So you're not saying that way.
I can tell you that
So what the select board will represent the people's desire to give the money away. Is that fair? So,
Yeah.
It's not a personal.
sorry, all right.
So I can tell you that they provide quality programming to young children with special needs and their families for over 50 years. They promote the inclusion of all children in the community. When I contacted them to ask for a description and quantification of services provided to Norridgewock, I got nothing. So you can almost consider the children's center, but not receiving money.
We don't have a children's center here in town, is what I'm trying to.
Correct. But
Yeah,
it doesn't
that's where I
stop
thought
the
the
request.
number would be, but it's.
Vote, all in favor? Or? Yes? That's everybody.
I make one thing that we accept the $45,000 budget
Second.
From the ground.
for grounds maintenance, sorry.
That was obviously a bid situation, right?
It was not, it was initially bid out. I want to say in 2018 is when it was bid out. It was an internal department prior to that. It was just a seasonal department of Public Works, and we bid it out at the time. And when we bid it out, we got a very loud message from those people that we solicited bids from that it wasn't an attractive bid package. We had people that really wanted to do town properties around the buildings. We had people that really wanted to do ball fields. And then we had one person that really was willing to do cemeteries. And that's the most difficult part of our contract is the cemeteries. And so Nickerson Yard Maintenance is located here. And candidly, they haven't given us a reason to bid it back out. They've been stable in their approach and this is since, arguably since 2021. So this is going to be year 3 that they are.
Held the
Yeah.
price.
They've held the line on it.
Do they just do the cemeteries?
No, they do all town
They do.
properties downtown.
That's the professional services you're talking
Yeah, it's a contract, right?
about.
Nickerson Yard Maintenance.
Sorry. Quite old fashioned ring. Sounds like she brought her landline with it.
So we'll take a vote for summer grounds. All in favor? Oh my goodness, I apologize. Sorry.
So we get a vice chair, right?
That's why we have a vice chair.
Right,
Getting through this whole.
yeah, let's move it.
Moving on.
To the end.
That was everybody voted, yes,
Yeah, right.
She's back.
Sorry.
We had a vice chair.
Just get your steps on, prove it to the end.
I make a motion on debt service that we accept 192.
I second it.
Don't have any choice.
Right.
All in favor? Okay, everybody. Unclassified,
Make a motion that we accept the amount of $30,623.
what? What is the 22,200 for the?
That's the town's subsidized contribution to the airport for operating expenses. So the airport operates in a separate fund, like the sewer department, and so as a show of support for the airport, the town pays 22 a year to support the operational deficit.
They operate at a loss.
Mhm.
By having this living there, you'd be gaining like.
I just thought I put it by there.
More law, you know, this and that.
So why do we keep giving?
Interest.
The short answer is no. I think you get a more intensified interest from people that are already there. Unfortunately, what we get for involvement organically there with people that are already there is very limited. You'll see 4 or 5 pilots and their families that are super dedicated to promoting the airport. And then everybody else just kind of ignores it, kind of stinks. But you can't go out there and rent or buy a hangar
Right.
unless you're already out there and know that somebody's gonna buy and rent a hangar. We're in the process now, the advisory just recommended that the board accepted increasing rates, so that's going from, they were paying $45 lease on their hangars a month, that's now going to 60. And the runway rental, which is the state of Maine doing their emergency vehicle operations training, that's going from $150 a day to $350 a day to cover a forecasted operational deficit of $15,000 this last year. Estimated.
So basically what you're saying that $20,000 should get that.
Right?
That should get that $20,000. 20,000, 2,000, 22,000, yeah. That should get down next year, right?
No. So this is considered part of the operational revenue. So they're not, it's not a break-even operation,
Right.
right? They're getting the 22 and they're still running approximately 15 deficit.
Oh, that much more, okay.
And then you look, we've done a big breakout, and if you guys want it, maybe a different time of the year, we can circle back after the election, probably. When you get a reconstituted budget committee, we can look at the finances of the airport. The select board's taking an interest in it. The airport advisory is now zeroed in on it, because it's a deficit driver. And you have to look at long-term sustainability and where do the costs get allocated. And who's shouldering all of this, so. It's something that we're looking at, is fuel sales, it's the fees associated with excise tax for airplanes, it's the hangar fees, it's the airport runway fees, and cost of labor still goes up. It's a pretty complex business venture. But no, and then there's still a backlog of debt back to the town that at the time, which is probably 10, 12 years ago, it was recommended that they take a note with the town to settle up and then begin giving 10 cents a gallon back to the town to pay down debt that the airport actually owns to the town, because they're separate, even though it's not, it is. And they've never been sustainable enough to be able to give that 10 cents a gallon of fuel sales back to the town.
Oh, wow.
So when you look at the liquidity of the airport, it's, you know, if you take all of the debt that they owe and all of the money that's in the bank and everything else, it's probably 50 grand down. Without this, it's not sustainable. This money is largely used for the local match of projects, the 5% of projects.
Then you look at the people that are using it, like the flight lease. I mean, they provide a service.
And you can store a plane out there for $60 a month.
So they own their hangars. Going rate for the average hangar, the run of the mill, they're probably paying anywhere between 7 and 15 grand for a hangar. And then after that, they pay us $60 a month, starting the first of the year. And that pretty much pays for grounds maintenance around. It's the luxuries that they, the plowing up to their hangar within 15 feet and things like that.
It's basically law, right?
Yeah, the
So just rent a lot.
condo fees that. Yeah, $60 a month,
It's cheap.
that is cheap. Yeah. Would we, any other discussion? Take a vote, everybody approve? Yep. Yeah.
Make a motion that we expect the $10,000 in contingency.
I seconded it.
And what is this fund? I mean, like, just
Just in case, sir.
just
Just in
in
case
case
somebody goes over.
cemetery needs some money.
No, it's just in case MMA dues come in at $9 over what we budgeted.
Okay,
It's in a pretty tight budget. That $9 gets written off the contingency and that 10,000 can help offset. There's the planning board overdrafted their account by $162.30. We can't overdraft that, so we charge it contingency and then contingency gets billed that $162.30. The fire department is gonna have, $1,000 to $2,000 probably in overdraft this year that is gonna get booked by this in the next 2 weeks. And the select board approves contingency.
anything else? Take a vote. All in favor? Revenue,
Start with 750,000. You're wide. It's $100,000.
So the road committee's been working for the last 9 months or so. And it's road committee, so it's gonna get dragged into this shortly. Where we've been, what we've been doing, where we want to go, inflation. It's been a big topic for about the last 10 years plus. It's been this amount, the 500 plus the 60,000, which used to be overlay and crack seal. Now it's all blended together so that what is best can be done in that year. And so they're looking at project priorities, which are many, which I think right now we have about 10 years
Oh, yeah.
worth of projects that need to get done.
Easy.
And so the discussion was, we need to better plan for this. And staying at the budget that we're at 560 doesn't allow them, in 2 years, they're gonna be upside down on it in terms of completing just the emerging needs that we have. So the request from the committee was 750,000. They don't have a column, so that's my request. The board voted last night to support $650,000, giving a nod to the road committee saying we're committed to roads. We understand what you're asking for, why you're asking for inflation, growing needs. Even outside of inflation, the rising cost. So that's where they're going. I think candidly, it would have been the full $750,000 request approved had there not been $2.5 million coming to the town from the federal government. And that's going to be to help us offset the cost of a standing river erosion problem, bank stabilization project that's permitted for this summer. We've got a failed road up on Father Isle Road, heading up towards Madison. We've lost a complete lane that's been closed down for well over a year now, a lane of traffic. That's on a straight down slope into a tributary of the Kennebec. Those are high cost projects that we just don't. High cost low impact. You spend all that money and you don't see anything. That's when I initiated a request for congressionally directed spending, and we were successful in getting 2.5. And then the balance of that money, I would expect it would be under $1 million probably. If what we're getting for preliminary cost estimates is accurate, we'll still have $1.5 million left that we can use to focus on roadways that affect rivers, which is every roadway in the town. So the road commit, well, we're in water, right? So then I think it'll be kicked to the road committee and the select board to determine what the priority is. On where the balance of that money would be spent. If not for that money, I think we'd be looking at the full 750. The one extra thing is. After tonight, you're not going to see roads as roads. Roads is going to be incorporated into the capital reserve. Budget. The select board decided that last night. Because we need to start thinking about this as a budget every year for road work. And we need to start thinking about it as the reserve. And just because we have $560,000 last year, we need to go out and find projects that we can use this $560,000 for. Get out of that frame of mind, focus that it's a reserve account, and we're gonna put $650,000 in it this year. What do we have for priorities? Maybe it's 1.2. Well, hopefully you've got money in your reserve, and we need to get to the point where maybe we're not spending anything, or it's a $50,000 overlay because Pike is in the area and they can pick it up. We've really got to reframe our mindset around this road account and the fact that we're spending $560,000 every year. That's not the goal. The goal is plan better. And there's a great deck that the road committee and I have put together with the department that puts out these project priorities, that affixes budgetary estimates to them and prioritizes them. And we are out of money. We can't get beyond. Well,
I don't know, you pretty much covered it. The only thing I was gonna say would be, it would be beneficial if some of you people would come to the road committee meeting. So you'd have a better understanding of what the priorities are and see the damages in the town, in the roads. So you'd have a clearer understanding of why we're asking for that money. So when we sit down and do this meeting, it would be easy going, because with inflation the way it's been and the rise in cost, roads are expensive. It's since I've been on the road committee, it's blown my mind how much it costs to do work.
I've heard a lot of discussion in the select board with Mike going and you going too. That's
What's that?
the select board meetings. You've done a lot of talking. Mike has been there and you've been
Yeah.
there and explained things to them.
Yep, we have.
For those meetings.
Yeah.
What I would-
It made for us doing that enrich it as well, because we got a nice pamphlet made with photographs showing the areas that are in need of repair and why they're in repair. It might even have been nice to even have it here tonight, but it's pretty clear when you look at it. You know.
Does the road committee still have their philosophy of paving all roads in town?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Do you still believe in paving all roads in town?
I know back a long day.
Well, that would be a nice thing to do, because a lot of people don't understand. It's cheaper to maintain a tarred road than a gravel road. I know some people want to live on a dirt road. They do, and that's something that have to be taken into consideration. You know, but people don't think about, and I've had this discussion a few different times, the road grader. All right, send it out to Beach Hill. And what did he come up with? $75 an hour? Is that what he?
that's just to operate it.
Just to operate that grader.
Purchase and maintenance.
Right, that's not purchase made, just to start that grader up and drive it out to Grader Road is $75 an hour. All right. If tarred road, you don't have to grade it.
And keep it up afterwards.
A lot less than what it costs to keep a gravel road, because the gravel roads wear out a lot faster than a tarred road. People don't think about that. When you fix a tarred road, ditch it, surface it. All right, when it rains, when they plow snow, they're just pushing that right away.
Well, I think if you know how to grade properly, but I've seen communities, not everyone, but others that actually prefer dirt roads because they are less expensive to maintain.
That's not true. We studied that. Dirt roads are more money to maintain.
I lived on a dirt road for a very, very long time, and it was a godsend to finally get it paved.
Yeah.
To not deal with the dust, to not deal with the banging dump trucks going by my house 500 times a day. You know, it's icier in the winter. I mean, it's just my personal preference and how, you
Yeah.
know, but
And not to get off subject, or hit a sore one, but I think one of the biggest mistakes the town's made in the past decade was Bigelow Hill.
Yeah.
Put out a ton of money, Bigelow Hill Road. The town paid a ton of money to build that road up, to pave it.
Yeah.
Did Walker Road too,
Yeah,
and then never paved it, and that's probably our number 2 generating concern call is Bigelow Hill Road. And the cost of grading and gravel and calcium, and water and all of that, it's exorbitant. And one of the biggest leverages that we had in the congressionally directed spending that we got was the impact of runoff, non-point source pollution of these gravel roads on the waterways and the phosphorus loaded. And they were very favorable to that, and we had the support of the Salem Federation. We had this, all of the natural organizations were about that, when we said, we're looking to cover up gravel roads with pavement, that's really what we'd like to do, and they were 120% behind it.
But I think salting the paved roads is not very good for the environment either.
Right, but you can use a little bit of salt, or you can use a ton of sand with a little bit of salt in it. And whatever you've got for material there, some of it's gonna leach in anyway, but it's gonna make its way to the water. It all flows downhill.
also,
I think a lot of trees are dead on island because of salt. And which is always causing power outage. But just what it is.
Did everybody see that up on
I
there?
don't think so.
yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think so.
thank you.
that's
And
interesting.
the
information.
Yeah.
road committee,
Well, that's where I was headed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was,
the road committee prioritizes which gets done when.
we try to prioritize what gets done first and how it's done. You know, sometimes we have to change our priority, not because we want to, it's just what's how it's driven.
Like what happened to Father All Road.
But that's right, you know, that was not what we wanted to do. I mean, look at your numbers up there. And, you know, you tell me where you're gonna put 650,000 up there.
And with all the trail coming in, and now our roads are open to 4-wheelers, and our dirt roads are going to lose more dirt because of that too.
4-wheelers are very hard on a dirt road.
Right. Yeah. Do you think this is enough? I mean, state
No, it's not enough.
funding,
No, it isn't.
I mean, that's what I'm saying, it's,
Oh, sorry, this was the other side. This was
Yeah.
when you look at when we hope to complete it, what it would actually cost. And so it's
Right.
costed $500,000. It's terrible, but you look at the Walker Road when it was prepped to be paved, and we looked at it 2 or 3 years ago to pave it, and it was $200,000.
Yeah.
And we waited 2 or 3 years, and it was over 400,000.
And Richard will tell you, since I've been on the road committee, my pet peeve is the town has had a few projects that they started years ago. And they have never completed them because they got dragged off in different directions. And that's been my personal little pet peeve. I think, let's finish what we've started.
So when you came up with the amount of 750, did you know about the 2.5 million
Yeah,
federal funds?
Knew that you could get it, didn't
Yeah.
know that it was gonna be secure.
Right.
Didn't know it was secured until last Thursday.
right. But we had discussions about it.
and is that 200 or 2 million?
2.5 million?
Is that just for certain roads? Or can you use it for all roads? Like you were saying something about watershed?
Yeah, so it's, I wrote the grant or the request for funding as, Norridgewock River and roadway preservation project. And it's targeting Father Isle and Sandy River Road, the high impact on the resource. But, you know, a very good argument we had at the last road committee meeting was with residual funds, you've got something like Welch Street that is something that could likely be ignored, but it's an in-town street, and that could bump up with the work going on Main Street with the state. Dovetail in the Wall Street project. It's a drainage project. Nobody likes to spend money on drainage because it's costly, and finish off that. And then your downtown proper is gonna look pretty good. And that's a high impact on Mill Stream to the Kennebec. So it really. You want to direct it for what it's intended for, and I think that's really your high impact areas on the resource being one.
I mean, like Father Road, for instance. We're very fortunate that we're not having to go to the taxpayers and let them pay for that whole project. Because that would just send the whole thing crazy.
The initial budgetary estimates with the proposal that the engineer had come up with was $1 million. That's one of the impetus of going to seek out this federal money. This is the second time I've gone for it.
Right.
We asked for 8.5.
Rich
Is
has
that
done a really
something
good
that
job
you
with
can do every year, though?
I would doubt it.
You
I think
doubt it?
very fortunate to get the funds that we've got. And Senator Collins' office was very gracious in terms of coming to town and playing with us and helping us. And I dabble in the lakes, so I have the connections here and there, so you know, people reach out to get letters of support. So we're able to get from the state, and we're able to get from DEP or whatnot, but then we're also able to tap into Todd Pinio and say, okay, these roads impact our response times. We were able to go to Jim Hilton and talk about the importance of agriculture and roadways in the Lambert Farm and things like that. So it's picture perfect. Sponsorship, if you're looking to bring home bacon, and it hits so many different aspects of wildlife and agriculture and infrastructure. So we really got lucky, but I would not count on this again. And the spending in higher levels of government is not sustainable, right? We can't just keep printing downstairs.
Yeah.
I know, but that's where this money came from, and I had heartburn still over it. Because you don't want to spend it, but if we don't spend it, it's gonna go somewhere else.
What's the time frame for using it?
Pardon?
How,
We don't have the conditions on it yet. We're expecting an announcement from the subcommittee, transportation subcommittee, before the end of January.
but it's likely to be 5 years or?
I'm not sure. I mean, honestly, $2.5 million will last us 2.
But based on the slide, I mean, in 2028, which is 5 years, we're basically at
Right.
5 million,
So
so $1 million a year.
Oh, yeah.
the select board last night gave the nod to the committee, and I think that they understand that that has to continue the trajectory of things don't get cheaper. And even if you're not paving, you've got to be mindful of cost. And so don't sling it all on year one. And I think next year you'll see a renewed request from the road committee, and you'll see a select board that understands that let's progressively implement this.
But our motion now is for 750. So that's next year. We'll see 750. We'll never see the 650 again.
Oh, is your motion for 750?
Yes.
Oh. Okay.
Nice pitch then.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Or we can do more. Right?
Or someone can make another motion, right? Service.
I think we would be happy with the 750.
You think so?
Yeah, for the
Plus
next year.
2.5
We've got, with what we've got going on,
You might not get it next year.
Plus 2.5 million.
well, we have to cross that bridge.
Said last night that if we did one more project next summer, we'd have to shut down that because you won't get it. We've got Burrell Hill, we've got Winding Hill, we've got Sandy River, hopefully Colorado will be happening.
Yeah, just to give you a little more input, like Burl Hill. You know, this is something that you people don't know, is like, we divide some of these projects up into 2-year projects. So that we can save a big chunk of money, because we don't have to get into engineering fees. I mean, what was it, like $100,000 for engineering fees for that? It was gonna be like $100,000 if we did it all in 1 year.
Are these all local companies?
Because
doing
it's guidelines that we have to follow. When you get to a certain price point, the state mandates that you have to engineer the projects.
Earl Hill this year was Nickerson Yard Maintenance that did the most of that work.
Yeah.
Fine Line out of Madison, they did a little bit of contracting up there as well. Sometimes you get local contractor, sometimes you get Pike.
But that bid process is weighted towards. the-
Okay.
Good job, Richard. I didn't know you had that ready to finger to. That was good.
All in the file.
Good deal.
Ready for a vote? All in favor? $750,000. That's everybody.
Chief said she's against it.
Oh.
Who's against it? Who's for it?
Okay.
Oh, four?
Or 6 against.
Okay.
Who wants to do it?
I would have liked 650 so we could increase it next year.
We might not even get 650 next year. Well. Do we have to do revenues?
Yes.
We do.
So you voted on all your expenses, and at the bottom of each of those expense sheets was the revenues. We've asked the questions here and there about the MERP money, the total vehicle excise tax is built in. Those are all things that are duplicated on this summary sheet.
Right
You go to page 2 of revenues. And you head almost all the way to the bottom. You're gonna see host community fees and intergovernmental. Just below planning board. And so the host community fees is revenue from waste management.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so the budget request this year is an offset to taxes. Increases from 650 to 775. It's an extra 125,000, how it's proposed.
And so far, we posted 830,000 in revenue.
That's correct, and I'm missing a December payment. Probably another 50 to 60,000 conservatively. We're expecting that next year, they're also going to start using the new cell, phase 14. And that's then going to trigger another increase in their per ton weight. It's also going to start triggering a CPI attachment to that, as well as the revenue generating cover like ash and things like that they bring in, where they get paid to bring it in, but then they use it for cover. We get 50 cents. We never got anything on it. We get 50 cents now after they start that new cell, it'll tie to CPI.
So potentially we'll get more than 775,000.
Well, we will, right, when we receive 830,
Right.
preliminary indicators from the organization is that we're gonna see more than what we got this year.
No, thanks. So you're just being conservative on that?
You don't want to spend all of it.
And when is it going to be shut down, capped, or, I mean, there will be an end to this money.
Yeah, so right now they're permitted for another 14 or 15 years, something to that effect. They have their projected lifespan.
Wasn't it 2038?
Yeah. Yeah.
I won't be here.
I mean.
Because we're coming up with that.
I mean, it's difficult to tell. I mean, you look at national trends, international trends of recycling. There's a facility they've talked about, I think in front of the planning board when they came to the cell about how they're mining the landfills. They're pulling things that were landfill and they're now pulling it back out. So the landfills are shrinking. And how they're reprocessing things like that. Then you get your push for composting, you're gonna get your forced recycling, forced composting, and things like that. That naturally will make their way along with electric requirements for vehicles. And you're gonna see this, the landscape of that change. So. It's hard to tell. So you have, that is the increase there on host community fees. Your KRDA first part, we pay out, then they pay us a little bit back. I added $1,000 in forecasted revenues in there. And then on page 2 are your state offsets. Revenue sharing has been trending ahead. They're at the full level of funding there and constantly trying to push. So we added $50,000 to forecasted revenue sharing, only $2,000 to tree growth reimbursements, business equipment reimbursement. That's the business equipment tax exemption program. Waste management used to participate in that. Under the terms of their contract with the town for host community, they're prohibited from participating in that. That's because they don't pay, they would not, if they participated, pay tax on that. the state would pay us 50% of the tax. And then that's it. So it's a tax back on the rest of us instead of them paying the taxes. So they are now not enrolled in that program. We will see an increase in that. We believe, and that's gonna come through the solar, where the solar developers, the solar facility owners will not pay the tax. They'll file for the reimbursement through the state, and the state will pay the town 50% of the taxable amount. Yeah. And then the homestead exemption, we continue to be a homestead heavy town. A lot of folks live here, and this is their primary residence, so we added 15,000 in there.
This tip doesn't go in here as revenue.
No, TIP is a standalone account, and when we actually budget for commitment, it's something we have to go back and manually figure. It's based upon the final tax rate. That's sheltered revenue.
I make a motion that we accept the 1,629,492 for revenues.
Second,
Both discussion, all in favor? Hold on.
One other budgetary item. Right. And that's going to come from the warrant, and that's the use of the undesignated fund surplus to offset commitment. I don't have the preliminary number for you as what we have. No, that's just a breakdown of the increase in county tax and school tax. Last year we used $300,000 to reduce the fund balance. What you've approved today is an increase to the tax base of about $238,000, which is about 20% of local tax. What we would raise locally, right? So anyway, $238,000, say, more than what it was last year. And we used $300,000 from surplus last year to offset tax amendment. So you could, we have a healthy fund balance. That's not really a concern. It's a matter of how much of that you would like to consider using to reduce taxation. So you've got the increase of about 238 if all of your recommendations are accepted. Your baseline was 300, so you could theoretically add 100 and say recommend 400. That reduces the added local share tax by
And then it comes to increase potentially from the other sources.
And then you've got your increase from county and from school. We should be benefiting more so than ever from Skowhagen's increase in value relative to ours because of the satin tax rate that they got a while back. It's continuing to work in our favor. It's just taking a while to phase in. And then in a couple of years down the line, when you have your savvy investment, that will very much benefit us as that plays through in terms of the added value relative to other communities in the district. But for today, you know, you got to figure 3 or 4% increase in schools, 3 or 4% increase in county. That's what we see every year. I mean, you can see the averages on the last page. As to where we are. Chuck Farron, I'll tell you, I remember when I used to pay $100,000 in county tax. I mean, in the last 10 years, it went from 388 to 524. In the school, as much as the school is a big bill, the school's gone up just about that much budget, a lot, you know, the size.
So if you don't want to raise taxes at all, you would recommend more than the 238 to account for the other that we can't account for.
Yeah. Right. The discussion that we had preliminarily with the select board at their first meeting in December was you have to consider the weight that gets put on the town and the town's budget in exchange for the county and the school continuing to rise. And every year we keep coming back at 0% and we take money from the host fees and we take money from this to cover up the increases that are actually coming from the other entities. And it's coming at a cost of us. And so it I want to get philosophical in terms of taxes, but it's like people need to understand that. Host money isn't gonna last forever, but we're using it to cover up increases at the county. We're using it to cover up increases at the school, and there's no participation. There's no, you go into a budget meeting at the school. And you're lucky if there's 4 residents of Norridgewock there. And that includes the 4 directives that represent us on the school board.
I don't think it'll be 2 empty seats.
Right, right. So it's the process that's just always been kind of a yes, and so it's. You have to decide where you're willing to draw that line. Do we need to take care of ourselves and talk about the other monies that are being spent at different levels? Or do we just say, okay, we're gonna continue to take the pressure year after year?
How much is potentially will go into the undesignated fund at year end? I know you said we're using 300, but how much is gonna go in there from not?
So this year, I mean, 300 is safe to draw it back from previous year. You could probably go to 4 or 5 very comfortably. Beyond that, I think,
How sustainable is that though?
correct.
With at 2% interest, really.
So it has a lot of what generates our surplus is when you have more revenues come in than what we budget for. So excise tax is really the example because that's a big number that we actually budget and it goes back into the general fund when we don't have it. So that's, we budgeted $670,000 last year and we brought in 737. So you've got, $70,000 that went into undesignated fund because of that budgeting mechanism. Host fees stay in the host fee designated. That might go to the general fund, that's the surplus. I think you could bump by 125, 150, or you could go as high as 2. But I think once you get to 2 or beyond, you're talking about sustainability. If we're just covering up tax increases.
Has people moving here increased, or are we seeing a rise in home sales and home buildings?
There's nothing to buy.
Well, I mean, building or adding in-law apartments or
Yeah.
apartments in general.
Yeah, so I mean, your good measure of that is your code revenue, right? Which and that, I mean, that's permitted naturally, but you look at the population, we've lost about 100 people in the last 10 years.
Wow.
But you can't
30
find a
died
house in
one
the
year.
town to buy right now.
No, what we're seeing is that we're seeing the properties sell, you're seeing them sell to a large number of them.
Can we-
You see them sell to both other states and then they're sitting vacant in their investments.
Can we do something to incentivize the houses that have sat empty for 20 years? Like there's one on Waterville Hill that has been, since I've been a little kid, vacant. And it's gross.
And now I still want to mow the lawn there.
Well, the windows are falling into.
Yeah.
And, can we offer incentive for those people or the ones on, over by Dave Service, those buildings, to use those for good and to
Right.
draw more attention.
So we have approached the owner of Wade Street,
Mhm.
and the neighbors have approached Wade Street. We obviously approached and said, well, I approached and expressed interest in purchasing, the town, even though we don't have any interest, we want to see if they're willing to sell, so we can work with the neighbors to try to facilitate a transaction. It's held corporately from Massachusetts, and honestly, I just sent them out automatic foreclosure notice last week.
Where's Wade Street?
Dave Service.
Okay.
So it's difficult. We just saw one turnover down here on Route 8, just by John Hardy's house. Been vacant for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Finally, somebody's purchased it, cleaning it up, looking really nice. We got one out of Bigelow Hill, a land sale, brought in an extra 60 grand. That's gonna go right into that'll go into surplus.
What about Amos Tuck? On Mechanic Street, is that vacant, that house?
Which house?
An old house, it said Amos Tuck.
But it'd be nice to do something to give an incentive for these people or companies to
So
help them around.
the thing that, it's not an incentive, but it is what it is. The select board has asked that I reapproach the development of a property maintenance ordinance. And whether it's downtown, the whole town, or none of the town. Thank you, we fixed that. We've had about 75 respondents so far. We've been getting hard copies here in the office now, which has been good because then you get people that are online. There's a lot of support for that. Townwide. They don't want to see it in a specific area, they want it townwide. I think that's really the only mechanism that you've got. One of the things that I'm seeing preliminarily for feedback is if there's gonna be something like that, then we need to have some sort of a program that can support people that don't have the means to do that. And then what's the system for evaluating that? I mean, obviously, we've got a great working relationship with Waste Management, and you can, by the way, take stuff for free. So there's really little reason to have trash to be hard. It's more the physical aspect of the house and then determining one's needs. And is it something that you end up leaning and you say, okay, well, we're gonna work with you and you're gonna pay us $50 a month until it's paid back, or it can get really sticky. But there's a lot of traction support that I'm seeing through that survey initially that is indicating that if it goes to vote again and it covers the entire town, it would pass.
Problem is you're getting, the people that are filling it out are the people that would want it cleaned up. It's a bias. I mean, if I live in a junkyard, I'm not gonna take your survey.
Well, I mean, you could, and you could say, no, I don't want it.
Right.
And we do have people that do that.
Right.
But you also have to understand that the same people that are gonna refuse to take a survey are probably gonna refuse to show a vote, and then it's gonna become law in the town, and then it's. You know, it is what it is. In the last 6 months, we've really targeted junkyards on Martin Stream Road. People are wondering why you're bothering us all of a sudden now. Clean up the front of your house, please. How can we help you? Why is it that way? And there's value to metal. Well, it's not as high as we want, and we run into those all over the place, but it's just small steps, and you know, that's the benefit of having code here. Who's able to follow up on those kind of things and take progression pictures, and if you notice it's a violation.
But you can also take the other approach is go to these people that. Whoever feels it's an eyesore and say, you know, what's the reason behind it? Instead of going to a violation and code enforcement, and why can't the town just say, we understand. This isn't the way we would like it to be. What can we do to help?
Right,
And
community
if
service.
we have all this tip money that goes to all these businesses, why can't we do something like that? Because most people that have a house in that condition, there's a reason for it. Either number one, physical, you know, physically they can't get out and do it, they're elderly, or they don't have the means.
And on a different note, they're just vacant, like the blue house on Main Street, that's vacant, and that could be used as a sale, or, you know, somebody new could come in and live there
Exactly.
and bring revenue to the town. Spend their money here. So there's two.
There
Yeah,
could be a
I mean,
sliding,
yeah,
core too.
right, and we've got waste management, so that we could probably get the
It
dumpsters
could
and,
be village improvement, event.
right?
Right.
Take TIF money and, you
Get
know, if
dumpsters.
you stay there for 5 years, you don't have to pay it back. Like you do with the businesses, you know? Think of it that way.
So are you looking for a motion for undesignated fund? I make a motion to use 3.5.
Only an extra 25,000. One additional 325,000.
Well, you have nothing now, right?
Oh, so, well, I was running at a baseline of 300.
Oh.
The number of last-
Yeah,
We used 300,000 last year.
Okay,
Keep the taxes flat.
so.
this is
So we
an
need
addition.
an additional 200,000 is what you're saying?
Mhm,
It's an additional 238.
that we just spent.
The select board proposed an additional 136, and they have yet to revisit the surplus question.
Can someone, it went over my head.
Okay.
One more time.
So, in the course of tonight's event,
Yes,
all of your wonderful discussion,
yes,
you have proposed an increase in taxation of approximately $238,000 locally. Where last year we raised $985,000 locally. You're proposing $238,000 more than that.
So that's 20.
so last year, we had a tax decrease.
That was because of the shift in valuation. Your valuation went up, your tax rate went down, and if you were homesteaded, you might have seen a $3 or $4 change in your tax bill. If you're not homesteaded, you went up, typically. If you lived in a mobile home, your taxes went up,
And this year, the taxes are going
maybe.
Shouldn't be much, of it, it's pretty close to be flat, isn't it?
So the base, last year's budget that went to tax was $985,000. This year's budget, as you have recommended, is $1.2 million. A difference of about $238,000. Representing a 24% increase in municipal allocation.
So that's why he needs that extra money.
I don't need it. I don't pay taxes here.
No,
Due respect.
we do. I mean,
Right,
we the town do.
right.
That's
Right here,
why you need that extra money.
the roads. So, yeah, if you took 100, if you went back to 650 for the road, is that 100,000, say?
That's gonna leave you up 136. Right.
When you have to do things like that, it's not
Right,
just
and the fire.
taking the money from TIF all the time and then it's gone.
Right,
And someday we have a crisis.
right.
It wasn't, that was just a big money
Okay, I'm slow.
hit at on.
So we're 238 over.
That's where it would come from. Since it was.
No, you're 238 over what we sent out in taxes last year for municipal only.
So if we stay at that number,
You would need to appropriate $538,000 in contingency.
Because we already had 300,000 that we dipped down in the fund already.
300 we did last year, so that would be 300 again this year.
So on top of that, 238,000.
And
So-
remember, we might be heading towards people having their tax back frozen. That is not repealed, as he was talking about earlier, the thing where people 65 years and older who've been here for 10 years.
Right.
They keep it at the rate they're at right now for life.
So even, yeah. And how many residents are 65? And
Oh, we had about 150 applications.
on. State of the water, everything here down. And that's recreation. All sorts of stuff.
broadband.
And I mean, honestly, I'm sure if you were to go, I'm just using you as an example, because you guys have a large property. If you were to go to a neighboring town, I'm sure the taxes are double,
Mm.
right? Or close, well,
Yeah,
Yeah. Mm,
yeah.
mm.
Getting more services, you might have to pay for
Well,
all.
if you go to, not necessarily like. Not like a Waterville station or services, but like a Fairfield or Skowhegan.
We're very thankful for this management. That's, I mean,
Right.
I
yeah,
think if people see that their tax is gonna go up for so much of this stuff, they'll be less interested.
right. And what did you say is a healthy, we have a healthy amount?
I mean, it's nice if we stay 1.8 to 2 million.
What do we got?
Well, I mean, it probably 2.4 million. So we're pulling it down into the high end of healthy. But we like to stay at the high end of what the auditors recommend.
However, typically you release 200,000+ back into it.
Right, but if we, so the option is. We'll look great this year if we put 500,000 against this,
Mhm.
but are we in a position to put 500,000 against it next year?
Right,
Or we budget cutting or getting that much in value from somewhere else, or revenue from waste management, we're gonna flush that. So it's gonna be sustainable.
eventually our taxes are going to go up and they're going to go up substantially,
And
yeah.
or do you go up a little bit this year and go up a little bit the next year, you know?
Right, and that's the downfall of last year, we could have, probably taken, from the assessor perspective, taken a little bit more and put it into overlay to cover up. The tax rate, because you can, anyway, somebody said, we should just keep this flat, don't cut it. Right, and it creates longer predictability. But what we're doing here when we use this money is we're covering up the increases. The taxes in Norridgewock haven't been flat. Candidly, municipal spending is up. It grows every year. It's the cost of employing people. It's the cost of buying goods.
And I think everybody understands that right now.
Right.
Well,
It's
here,
supersized,
right, right.
And, but the fact of the matter is, none of that, I don't believe, is gonna come back. We're not gonna say, oh, you're gonna get 50-cent pay cut this year because inflation is lower. No, you're not gonna see that. Or the cost of arena paper is gonna go down. So we have to be prepared that this is our new baseline budget. And that whatever we get handed down from the school is gonna be, the school budget's not going down. Unless things get really bad in our town, which we don't, then we're in real pickle. That's when we're gonna get more support.
Well, we're not gonna tell the fire department next year that we're not putting that money aside and we're not gonna change all these big.
This is a baseline budget, and we
They want more.
we've talked about things tonight where does the highway department need to have more money? And it almost got put in. And there are other areas where it's like, do we need to put more money in? The fire station is $10,000 a year, and it seems premature, but we'll never pay for the fire station. The town office will never. So this is a baseline, and we have to understand it. And there's gotta be, it's not that you want to hand out to the public, but tax rate's been pretty flat for the last 6 or 7 years, and if it goes up a little bit or whatever, then it's gonna be stable, I'll say, but.
Living on the shoreline, I haven't seen that it's stable. My taxes have gone up over time since I moved here.
It would have been adjusted in 2017, probably due to the age of your home. If someone from other brackets in 2017, after that, it would have reset, and it should have been stable since then. 2017 was a big adjustment for a lot of folks.
But right now, we're just hiding,
An inevitable increase.
right,
Yeah,
I mean,
increases.
And it's gonna get bigger.
eventually, right, and eventually the money's gonna run out and there's not gonna be a pot to dip out of, and here we are, reality people, it's.
Okay, administration.
I mean, I'm here to lay it out for you. You voted it through, and then it's a
Yeah.
matter of, do you want to go back and revisit it? If you want to revisit a category, we can. If you want to talk about your contingent, your surplus views, then talk about that too. Your pleasure.
Or we can do nothing.
At the pleasure of the budget committee.
Or we can do, or we can do nothing and taxes will go up by 24%.
And
The
this
local
goes,
The local share.
back to the select board, and then it goes to the town, and if the town says, I don't want a 24% tax increase, this forces us back to the table to say, we need to cut.
Yeah, so there's one thing I've learned about this town in the 7 years that I've been budgeting here.
Everybody says yes.
Wow. Because they assume that I've done my job,
Right,
budget committee's done theirs, the select board's done theirs, by the time it gets to that, it's what we need.
right.
But that they've got waste management money and.
But everybody goes off of what Richard has put on here.
Right. You
And
have a budget that's quite a bit more than mine.
yeah,
I mean, it's right. Not that you need to be budget cutting, but you know, it's the honest assessment of it. And if you say we could put $500,000 on this, is that sustainability? They're trusting you to look at this budget and talk about sustainability.
Well, the problem too is that, people are never gonna look at it. Gonna go to the town meeting and somebody's gonna stand up and say, I make a motion that we pass 1 to 52.
like last year.
And that's
Yes.
it. And the big shock comes when they then get their tax bill.
Right.
So I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. So like, is there some example we can use? If I have for every $1,000 of tax I pay, it's not really gonna go up by 24% because we've got these other.
Correct.
So can you give me like something, is there some example that we can say if I pay, you know?
Yeah.
I don't wanna struggle, I think I'm struggling with this, sorry.
No, that's, you gotta,
Because 24% seems like a huge increase, but if
Right, it might
it's a
be $20.
24, increase on 5% or,
Don't fall over backwards. Hang on. Oh,
So our taxes. We could be right, came out, said no. Yeah, what you said no to.
That number was 980. 888.
What's this one?
Divided by the total raise.
Zip line.
So it's 30% of your tax bill is
That's not a, no, but that's.
approximately.
33, okay, so 33% of our total tax bill is going up by 24%.
Yeah. And your school goes up by 3.
That's where I changed.
Maybe. Do we know, is there a preliminary?
I'm on day 2,
Well, I know that,
or day 3, whatever today is.
but you, I mean, you have to figure it's gonna be 35%. And you can look at the trend. The last year here, the last year. The school went up 2.6 last, it was in 2020. And the year before was 5.2, 6.3 the year before that. It can go anywhere. And the county's been, you know, the county had an 8% increase in 2019.
Well, and also we're gonna be paying everybody higher.
I mean, account for 5 or 10 years there, yes,
Everybody's gonna be paid.
on the other 75%.
I feel like we should go over 400,000. I feel like we need to have a little bit of an increase.
And that's about.
Because we're gonna have another increase next year, it's gonna be bigger.
So people that are listening, can hear.
Sorry.
I feel like we shouldn't use more than 400,000 in fund balance. I feel like we need to have an increase, but that's just my opinion.
I can't hear what you.
And how much are we using?
We're not using any, well,
300,000.
we used this
What we
year,
used last year.
and we need 238
Right.
Above, you know,
above and beyond
Above and
that.
beyond the 300 that we've already dipped out. Yeah,
So the real number is 538,000 is what? If we didn't dip it
Let's say
all.
535, right, go with 535.
$500,000.
Almost.
So maybe you do have to go back and revisit some of these things and cut it down. We were nice, we did some progressive things, I think, tonight. Now we're at the reality check. Maybe it's an awful thought.
But how much are you going to get it down? I mean, this is year after year, everything's going up and everybody wants.
Every more and more.
a lot of those things you can't cut. The wages, FICA, unemployment, all that, stuff. You can't cut that.
Right. You can cut people, you can cut equipment, you can,
Right.
does the fire department need 3 trucks? Does the
Yeah.
town need 4? Can we get by with 3 or 2?
Well, the
or-
town-
That's what you're really talking.
Yes.
Micromanage that.
And the same thing with roads too, you're not using all that in 1 year. You can't possibly do that much work in 1 year.
Right, but the figures that were there for 500 million or $5 million in the next 5 years for road projects, and that's only a Band-Aid, basically.
Right.
I mean,
Infrastructure,
that,
by the time you finish it, you're starting.
That doesn't even tell you what's gonna come up in the next 5 years.
right.
Good discussion. We're moving in on 9 o'clock.
Do we want to?
You could extend it by half an hour and you can schedule a separate meeting. But consider this. Use the extra 100,000 from surplus to the 400,000. And scale back your road allowance to 650. And see what the door opens for next year in terms of railing that up to the 750 next year and phase that in instead of booking that into a sudden tax increase now. Phase that in over the course of 2 years. Or just leave it and absorb the tax increase. Or go back to every department. If we can do this.
I think this is a reality check for everybody. I mean, it's not gonna get any better next year. So even if we go back and we pull money out, I mean,
Yeah, 10,000 here, 5,000, whatever.
it's $500,000, that's. Do we need everything that we have in this town? Is what it boils down to, you know, and that's where you're going to have to come to.
Why don't we have this?
About all of this.
Should have kept some,
Don't,
how much you can
and
spend.
our town goes the other way, then we lose even more tax revenue. And then in 15 years, when the waste management shuts down, you don't have any.
Right.
So you can look at this as an expense, or you can look at this as a long-term investment. And you can say, right now, we have the opportunity to offset some of these costs because of waste management. And we need to do these things because we're not gonna always have waste management. We've got to build infrastructure in our town. We've got to build economic drivers in our town. So when they do shut down, we don't lose the step. So. You know, I usually have a backwards way of thinking about things, but I really say, in everything we approved, yep, we spent $100,000 more on roads. Is it gonna be way more in 3 years? Yes.
Yeah,
You know, so why wouldn't we do all these things now when they're a little bit less expensive than they will be, and hopefully build and get more of a tax basis long term?
Would you like to revisit revenues and the number assigned to waste management host fees? Where we already have $830,000 revenue this year with one more payment to go. We've budgeted 775. You could theoretically increase that. You're looking at it from an investment perspective. You could say, let's bump that to 875. Even if you overdraft, there's still a host community account that would cover that. That would add another $100,000 into investment.
So we're gonna more accurately project our revenue for host fees, is all we're saying.
Right, you're not gonna, that money won't lapse, yep. But when you talk about investment rising costs, that is an opportunity there.
and where does that money, that's a separate fund that goes into
Correct.
currently?
How many separate funds do we have?
Quite a few.
I say that's a separate fund that's not run as it's a separate account. The airport and sewer are separate funds. They operate silent. Waste management is kept in a separate account, and then we also have an emergency account for waste management that we can't.
So how much do we actually have in the waste management account, you know, Rick?
You give me 2 minutes.
Okay, it's right at the end of your fingers.
Almost.
Because that's what you really want to look at.
Yeah. I think my opinion is we're putting a Band-Aid on it, and we might as well just rip it off now and say it is what it is, and
They'll say the same thing next year.
Well, I kind of like his opinion. You can afford to do these projects now. 15 years from now,
Right.
you're not going to be able to afford to
Right.
do them. So
The way.
when you go grocery shopping, do you buy the extra groceries when you can afford them, or when you don't have any money?
right. You buy the beans and
Instead of the steak.
the noodles, and yes,
And
Right.
right now, we can afford.
yeah. But eventually it's going to boil down to staffing and fire department. I mean, look at the budgets between,
It's gonna go up.
we need to have roads and.
So the host
Get your
benefit,
gap paid.
the cash balance today in the bank is 205,000, but we've moved $1 million of that to the CD.
Okay, so you get 1,205,000.
Yes, and I think that there's another $1 million and that went to investment.
Oh,
And the
yes,
higher
I
interest
forgot
rate.
about that. So we,
And then there's $1 million from the host emergency that went to investment.
So we should be getting a lot more than you budgeted in interest as well, if things stay the way they are.
Correct.
But how much did we already lose?
In investments,
Hmm,
Oh, I was at
yeah,
that.
let's.
you don't want to look. at it a lot.
I mean, I know.
That poor thing when the guy came in and did the presentation on it.
I was here.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah, see, I
I want to take everything out of one pay account.
tried to get him to do that 3 or 4 years ago. I brought a guy in 3 or 4 years ago, and had to give a presentation. on that.
Okay. Libby, right?
That guy was pretty honest. I mean, that guy is a local guy.
he was here about a month ago.
He was very open and honest.
Poor guy.
Who's, the one from Waterville, your investment guy?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was here that night.
Wasn't it,
I don't envy him that day.
wasn't it Libby?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I thought he did a good job.
He did. Nobody.
Yeah, but
I mean, I didn't like what he was saying, but it was very,
That's, you
That's
know,
what it
he
is.
presented it simply and you know.
he did, but it's still the right thing to do.
Yeah, but again, how much money has the town lost and that plays into
You've only,
account
you've
here.
only lost it on paper.
Well, and if you look at the last 5 years, yeah, lost it.
That's right.
When you start and when you stop,
That's right. That in between stuff. I mean, I'm invested.
money hasn't come out of the pocket.
We're down to 240,000.
But that's gonna come back.
And that's the 240,000 that we're talking about now. I mean, dipping out of the fund,
Right.
you know?
But I can tell you in the first, 2 days of business, we've made back 19.
We only have,
So you don't want to look at the small snapshot, but things are changing every day.
Right.
Who knows what's gonna happen overnight, but when we moved the money over here, the commitment was 10 years. We're prepared to live without this money for 10 years. And obviously, they want to keep it forever. But you get to the point where you reinvest some and draw some out. And this would be the fund that creates that long-term stability for us. We become trust fund babies.
Because one of the things that you don't look at, you might. You're down $230,000, but you're also buying stocks at a reduced rate now.
Right.
And when that money turns around and comes back, it comes back with a vengeance.
In most cases.
Can I make a motion that we revisit revenues? And change it from 1,629,000 to 1,729,492.
And you increasing the post benefit fee in order to get that.
so 1,629,000 to what?
1,729,492, adding 100,000.
That would be the amount of 870.
You know, continue with that motion and tell us what you're gonna do. With the total, are we gonna then just put 138 towards taxes?
Yeah,
So we keep that at the 300,000.
So it would be, I would say, would you recommend 438 or?
That's not my fault. You have arguments on all sides.
And this, this go up for this yet?
Select board went through, we didn't do surplus yet. Honestly, because I forgot.
I feel like we should go up a little bit as a municipality. That's just my opinion. We need, I mean. You can't stay flat all the time. Especially in these times. I mean, I get.
It's fortunate that we've been able to make it, right?
And people are looking to move here. I mean, that was my point earlier. You can't buy a house right now. And John said that, you know.
Right, and the people that did buy, all the new people that we've got. Are paying a lot less than from wherever they came from, so
Right.
might as well trade them. Now, isn't it? How many people, we did have a lot of property turnover this year.
It slowed right up. I think this month we had 5 transferred.
But people are coming to the benefits, so yeah,
Right.
they do it, yeah.
And people that bought were from out of state.
Right. Yeah, we love that when they move from out of state and want to live here. Right, they
Well,
do.
sure.
They're really nice people.
Yes.
But you also get people from out of state that just come by and they don't.
And
really
put that
know
drug house
where it
right
is.
next to you.
Right,
All right, so what's the rest of the motion?
Add 100,000 to revenue, and then my other motion is gonna use 400,000 for fund balance. But that's the 2 separate motions.
so first of the revenues, adding 100,000 forecasted
I'll second that.
waste management.
And a vote on that? All in favor? Let's say yes.
I couldn't hear what you said.
Adding 100,000 to revenue from waste management. But, and then I'm also gonna make a motion that we use 400,000 for.
Well, fine.
That's money.
Mine was on medical only, so emergency and obviously that's one. Okay, so we had a
I
unanimous?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
on that one.
And I make a motion that we add 400,000 to using fund balance.
To the website.
To using fund balance money.
But that only,
That leaves 38,000 roughly. Unaccounted for, correct?
That's correct.
I'm gonna second that.
mm,
So get to vote.
So what did you decide?
The motion on the floor is to use $400,000 of surplus to offset taxes.
but we just increased.
Result,
We went up from 325, was it
it was 300.
300?
400,000.
So you added on to taxes.
Right,
So you're looking at a net increase to taxes from the town of 38,000.
okay, any? Go ahead.
Go for it, yeah.
Vote. All in favor?
All in favor?
And opposed, or,
So the motion on the floor is to use up to $400,000 from surplus to reduce taxes. Good,
or no, if you don't want to, you can vote no,
No, I'd like to see the tax go down.
okay,
I think.
but you're dipping out of that bucket.
Next year, we don't have to go work the next one. I mean, we can do it and then install it. No,
So,
the motion is for 400,000, and I think you should call for a vote and make sure you count it,
okay,
so hands aren't caught in
Sorry,
there. The motion is to use up to $400,000 from surplus.
all in favor,
You're waiting for me, right?
that is 5. All opposed. That's 2,
Why are you opposed? I must have missed that.
because I would like to see not so much funds getting dipped down, like, let the taxpayers know that
Take the hit.
take the hit now, because next year it's going to be either everybody's really going to go line by line, save money, or next year it's gonna be a bigger hit.
I think we're just gonna have to cut out some, well, I may not be here, but.
Something's gonna, yeah.
We spend too much money.
Yeah.
We give everybody what they want. We don't have to have the best of everything.
Right,
I mean, a family doesn't have the best of everything. in
Right.
general. You don't go buy steak just because you can afford it.
ramen noodles, yes,
Yeah.
if you'd like to eat tonight, you get ramen noodles, yes.
I've said this before, and I feel that, it's the town manager's job to make sure that we're spending appropriately and wisely and, making decisions on behalf of the town.
So, and everybody's going to blame Richard. Yeah, yeah,
So, but you
Yeah.
gave us back.
yeah. So this is why it's so important for everybody out there to come to town meetings and talk to your select board and everybody else about all these figures.
I think
It's a
we-
lot of money.
I feel like we did our homework and we reviewed it pretty carefully. But I think that maybe the future, we should start with, here's how much you have. And every time, kind of like filling up that thermometer.
Mhm.
And so we think more carefully that, hey, we're getting up to that mark where now we're gonna have to take out 100,000, whatever it is.
I can tell you what I start with, and it's that bar right there. What's my net to tax and what's my actual expense and what are the changes? And that's, I've been working, what you guys have been doing all night, I kind of calculated into that. My proposal was plus 234,000. You spent more money than I did.
But how much would we spend? I feel like we added that much from what was on the table when we got here.
Well, compared to the select board, it was the $100,000 for roads.
Right.
And then that was about it. In the library, threw it off by another couple thousand. No, about 102,000.
So it's
And
true,
it-
and his animals gone.
No, that was it, so. That's all that I have for you, unless the select board generates any other, warrant articles related to investment, finance, appropriation. this would be the last meeting for town meeting.
Is there a way in the future, so we're not up against the clock and up against the meetings and getting the deadlines? Can this be pushed back a little bit so we have time to talk about it? Is that a possibility?
In terms of,
Going back and forth with numbers. You know, because you're bringing this to the select board
Mhm.
and
I wouldn't be opposed to having two meetings, like starting like we used to in late December to go over a few. And then having time to
Yeah.
cross.
We should divide it in half.
right,
right, so you drive your committee. If you want more than, I set up your initial meeting, and then after that, it's up to you. We spent half an hour, 35 minutes reviewing the fire department.
Mhm.
We spent 15 minutes on admin, and then we whipped through public works at 7:07 and then 707,000 or things like that. If you want to, we can break it up. And we don't have a ton of presentations, it's really just fire. So we can always do that. It's whatever you want, you're an elected board. We can split it up, but the negotiation back and forth is difficult. And the other thing, especially this year, the board got this, the select board got this all at one. And it was later than they usually get it. Because I knew how it was shaping up. And because we wanted to make sure that they saw the total picture as they made their way through it. Because if I had given you piece by piece, the small and easy departments, it would have been out of control. And I knew that it was bad on the surface, so how we're going to address this and how we're going to meter it down. So that's why it was presented in the way that it was. And if you want to take more time, we can always take more time from the back and review. We can spend another meeting. But yeah, that's why it came in mass.
And we could not vote on them and just come with discussions,
Mhm.
right? And
yeah,
not
look at the
go-
figures and talk about it and. Mhm,
Well,
right.
but you're saying this is a done deal for this year? Or are you saying that we meet again?
No, I'm saying next year. Yeah,
Yeah, for next,
yeah. But at least that's where my brain was going.
I would like to see that personally, because I feel like this is. You don't even get the scope of it, it just, let's go, let's just push it on through, you know. And there's no depth to it, this is a
That was page
lot,
by page out of context of the total.
right, yeah.
It'll be even worse because somebody will just say,
1 for 35 and let's approve it, so. If everybody's good, we can adjourn, I guess, and. Do we need to schedule the next meeting or
So you have a chair, the chair is going to be the next meeting.
the chair? I do,
Thursday.
If there is one, if there is a next meeting, then the first phone call goes to you for the next year. That's how did you schedule one?
Can we
Yeah, you
have
need to predict.
more choices next time? We only had one day
yeah,
this time and two of us have a meeting that we canceled.
Yes,
So we could be here.
I got that after the fact. We started calling, we had 2 date options, and it came to this one because some people couldn't.
I only
go out.
got one choice.
Correct, well, that was because there was already a form at the end of the list. And my schedule's jammed, and I have a schedule in order to be able to get this before the board and the reviews. So I get that, but I was also under the impression the library met the 3rd Thursday of the month, and that's why the library.
No, the library,
Green met the 3rd Thursday of the month, and that's why. the library-
that switch never been. The library needs something, Margaret could only do it.
I
They
thought
had
it
a
has because of grant. Anyway,
The planning board just.
the town clerk has the luxury of scheduling the first meeting. If you couldn't attend, then you don't have to attend.
Okay, but
I apologize, but there's a chair now.
but why did some people get the choice of the 50 and others?
Because it started until I could get what works for you. Skip says, okay, either way. I call for John. John says, well, I can do either night, but I'd rather do this night because I've got a kid's game.
So, and then Sally and I don't get the choice and
Right.
just,
I didn't
Had
get
a
a
choice,
choice.
so over.
it didn't seem quite fair. These two
I didn't get
guys,
it.
Didn't know if we could make it or not. When we
You
had
have a
one, we had one.
you have a choice?
I was told a couple of dates and I responded. Work better.
I was open to both nights.
Yeah, so you were, both of you said you're both.
So
Would it work for me?
we had no say in it.
I said no to the first.
Well, you know, we didn't have it at all. We were called up and said the meeting is during the next year.
Like I said,